Commissioner Fritz on the phone. In person to PCC 3.02.025, Commissioner Fritz is participating by phone. Failure to allow participation of a city council member by electronic communication would jeopardize the public interest, health, safety, or welfare. Mayor Wheeler is also not physically present, but was contacted and given an opportunity to participate by phone. Do any of the council members who are physically present object to having Commissioner Fritz participate by phone?
Nope.
Seeing no objection, welcome Commissioner Fritz.
Good morning.
Good morning. I have a panel of individuals that will be coming up so that we can acknowledge that January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And the individuals that I'm going to ask to come up is Diana Gutman, Lieutenant Beisner, is that? Besner. I always have a 50-50 shot at getting it right. Welcome.
Welcome.
Please introduce yourself and take it away.
Good morning, Madam President and Council. My name is Diana Gutman, and I am here today in regards to the proclamation reading for Human Trafficking Awareness Month. I first want to take a moment to acknowledge and honor the host people of the lands that we're currently on. This includes the Chinook, the Kalalapuya, the Clackamas, the Cowlitz, and the Clatskanie tribes. National Human Trafficking Awareness Day is recognized annually in the United States on January 11th. And this is to bring awareness and opposition to human trafficking. Human trafficking is a modern day form of slavery, and this affects so many communities. It affects our entire country, but when we bring it down into a smaller scopes, it has a major effect in our community statewide. Even here in the state of Oregon, we are at an epidemic. Women and children and our elders are most susceptible to human trafficking. And public safety is a community effort. We have to work together as a community to bring awareness and talk about the things that are very difficult to talk about. Human trafficking, sexual violence, these kinds of things are not easy for anyone under any circumstances to talk about at all. And so as we come together as a community, it's important that we are able to talk about these things, because talking about it, acknowledging it, is going to be one of the ways that we bring prevention, awareness, and education. And education is so important. Lack of education has never been a benefactor to anyone. And so I just want to say thank you to the Portland City Council to bring this to the attention of the city. And I think that it is very special because we started the beginning of the month with Multnomah County doing a proclamation reading of human trafficking. And it's very fitting that we close it here in City Hall. And so it is an honor to be here today. And I thank the council for being able to shed light on this serious subject and to bring awareness to our community. So thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Council.
Thank you for being here. Lieutenant?
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Leo Bessner, and I'm a lieutenant with the Police Bureau. One of my areas of responsibility is supervising the Human Trafficking Unit within the Detective Division. I'm here today to ask for your support raising awareness for human trafficking with the issuance of the proclamation. The goal of the Human Trafficking Unit is to identify people who are being victimized, exploited, and trafficked. Identify the person or people involved in the exploitation and hold them accountable to the fullest extent of the law. We currently have 3 crime victim advocates, which are new additions to the Police Bureau working internally, and they work with the victims, providing support from initial contact throughout any criminal justice proceedings, and then also helping with identifying and procuring long-term needs and finding support for each individual, and they do that by working with our external community partners. In 2019, the Human Trafficking Division was assigned 31 cases for investigation and then wrote approximately 100 search warrants in support of those investigations. During that time, we also conducted 6 street-level enforcement missions targeting online prostitution and arrested 11 individuals who are engaging in online prostitution activities. During that time, we've also conducted 13 training sessions, which are designed to educate the public on human trafficking, and specifically working with some of the business community with hotels and motels in the area so that they're aware of what it looks like and how to best identify it, and then also establishing that partnership with our business partners so that when we do find evidence or we do have some information that they're helping us in identifying suspects. We've also attended 20 community events raising awareness of human trafficking, and our crime victim advocates have made 37 initial victim contacts. We're also working collaboratively with the Multnomah County Human Trafficking Collaborative, and our crime victim advocates are newly members of that collaborative. Each individual case and each individual victim need our support, and we're here today asking for yours as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Colleagues, any comments? We're waiting for the time delay for the phone. Not hearing any. Commissioner Udaley.
No, just
No?
thank you for being here.
I want to thank you also for being here. I want you to know, I know we talked a little earlier, maybe with you, Diana, about kind of revising the proclamation because the language about human trafficking being like modern day slavery was language that I personally have a problem with because there's nothing like slavery. Absolutely nothing in the world. So I appreciate your willingness to work with me to change it so that we could really focus on what the core issue is here today. So I want to thank you for your flexibility because it was really quick that we did that this morning. Thank you very much. So I'm going to read the proclamation, and if you'd like, we could take a picture. There's not a lot of us, but we'd be happy to take one with you anyway, okay?
This is a little strange. Yeah.
And this proclamation is from the entire City Council. Whereas January 2020 is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and whereas human trafficking involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sexual act, and whereas Portland has demonstrated a longstanding commitment to addressing this problem as part of the Human Trafficking Collaborative, which is a partnership with the State of Oregon, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, and community-based social service providers. Whereas, as a community, we must acknowledge oppressive social structures and crimes contributing to human trafficking in our community. Only when this ugly reality comes out of the shadows, giving victims voice, we can bring an end to this trafficking and victims can begin to heal. And whereas the City of Portland recognizes and thanks all the organizations and groups committed to addressing, preventing, and healing from human trafficking, often working directly with survivors to ensure that they have access to employment opportunities, housing, legal resources, and other services. And despite this commitment, far too many in our community are affected by human trafficking, and whereas human trafficking affects every community, but there is something each of us can do about it. And whereas if you or someone you know are a victim of human trafficking, help is available through the National Trafficking Hotline at 1-800-373-7888 or humantraffickinghotline.org. Now, therefore, Portland City Council, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim January of 2020 to be Human Trafficking Awareness Month in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this month by gaining awareness of these issues and supporting organizations that work to address, prevent, and help those affected by human trafficking. Thank you so much for bringing this resolution to us, and you have our full support in moving this work forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, quick picture, and then we're back to the agenda.
One more, real quick. Sorry, one more. Can I do one more? I apologize. I apologize. One more. Sorry, Commissioner. I'm slow. I was slow. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much. No, that's yours. You get to keep it.
Thank you.
Some people throw dots at them, some frame them.
This is very special. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Portland City Council for January 22nd, 2020. Caller, can you please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Udaly,
Here.
Wheeler, Hardesty.
Here. Thank you. Before we begin, our city attorney will please read the rules of decorum.
Thank you, Commissioner. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony of council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you. We will begin with communication items. Caller, will you please read the first item?
Item 59, request of Bridget Bear to address council regarding proposed changes to Code Section 3.96 relating to questions of equity, training, and support.
I don't see Ms. Bridget Beyer, and I will go to the next.
Item 60, request of Byrd to address council regarding the Williams and Russell project.
Good morning, welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm Bird with the Emmanuel Displaced Persons Association 2, EDPA 2. Our email contact is contactedpa2@gmail.com. For the past 3 years, EDPA 2 has met with Mayor Wheeler concerning the history of the Emmanuel Hospital expansion and the property located at North Williams and North Russell. At our last meeting, or our most recent meeting, it was in response to Mayor Wheeler's request that we come up with a plan. At that meeting, we requested that a Descendants Day with a proclamation is established for the descendants of the Emmanuel Hospital expansion, and we also presented a pretty robust plan for what can go on that property. And it has a community engagement component with that, where it provides internship opportunities starting as young as middle school, with Harriet Tubman Middle School being in such close proximity to that property. The Emmanuel Hospital expansion is a unique situation in that it was the most egregious abuse of eminent domain. The Emmanuel Hospital expansion actually changed urban renewal law regarding eminent domain and community engagement in urban renewal plans. But it's also unique because it was so egregious, there was an agreement that was made that stated for every home that was demolished, it should be replaced. For every family that lost a home should be replaced. That agreement is actually couched in city policy. There was a city policy passed, a relocation housing policy for the families who lost their homes during this Emmanuel Hospital expansion. On August 1st, 2017, Emmanuel Hospital, City of Portland, PDC announced that they would return some of the land that was taken away from the families during that time. More than 55 acres were taken away, but yet only 22,000 square feet is being returned. My question today is, how can the city of Portland claim to correct a racist past in regards to the Emmanuel Hospital expansion and not address the damage? The descendants of the families whose homes were taken should be considered in every conversation that takes place, and anything that is returned should go to the descendants of the families, because a lot of the homeowners have died off because it's taken 50 years for this property to be released.
You ended up with time to spare. That was right within the timeline. I had a conversation with Mayor Wheeler about this particular project earlier this week. And Bert, I understand that your organization has a seat at the table of this Williams and Broadway redevelopment project. And I understand that you left, and then you sent a representative who also left that table. And so the message I want to give you is that seat is still your seat, your organization's seat, and we need your voice at that table. We need a strong voice that really understands the legacy of what's happened to the inner Northeast community over and over and over again.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Hardesty. Here's the problem. Our questions never got answered. We were met with hostility. In our last meeting with Mayor Wheeler in December, he directed the working group leaders to follow up with us. Jamal
Right.
Fox sent us an email. He CC'd Cupid Alexander and
Right.
Mustafa Washington. I replied back. No one ever followed up. No one followed up to Mayor Wheeler's directive.
So we should make sure that there's follow-up to, you sent a written email in
I
response.
sent a written email. Cupid Alexander and Mustafa were included in that email. We never received a response.
This is a legacy problem, as you well know, in Oregon. And again, I will help you make a connection with the mayor's office if they're not being responsive. But I want your voice. You need to have your voice at that table, right?
Thank you.
The old saying is, if you're not at the table, you're for lunch. That is absolutely true, right? We need your voice. We need your organization at that table. You need to make that committee do the right thing.
Commissioner Hardesty, I want to say one more thing. It wasn't just a legacy PDC issue. It was a coordinated effort, this whole entire city,
I
including
understand.
local media.
Ma'am, I understand the redlining, I understand the displacement, I understand every urban renewal removed Black family homeowners. I understand that. I know the history, and I feel the pain that you're carrying around with that legacy. So know that I am very, very mindful and aware of the harm that's been done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Caller, the next communication item, please.
61, request of Lauren Couture to address council regarding community impacts for the Water Bureau's proposed water filtration plant.
Good morning. Welcome. Please introduce yourself. 3 minutes.
Good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
Lauren Corder. I am a neighbor to the proposed filtration project site, and I've dedicated countless hours over the last year of my life to understanding the history, rationale, and impacts of this project. My opposition to this project was initially driven by emotion and the injustice. Research has led me to a deeper understanding of the facts. Over and over again, I am shocked by the blatant strategic misrepresentation of Portland Water Bureau's leadership and engineers. It is the corruption of this agency that motivates me more to fight against this unnecessary project for my community and the people of Portland. This is a $1 billion project. This is a mega project on the scale of a shipping canal, a large hydropower facility, airport, nuclear power plant, and the list goes on. Portland wants to drop this mega industrial project on the quiet, rural, agricultural, residential community. I am certain that Portlanders value families, affordable living, community, and the environment, and the best tasting water in the country. This project opposes every one of those values. According to Portland Water Bureau's own documents, rates will at least double for the average family, and just for this project alone. During construction, there will be hundreds of diesel trucks running through our rural roads, daily disrupting our lives for more than 5 years. Pipeline construction will devastate the topsoil and productivity of our farmland. This project is authorizing the condemnation of property of hardworking families and farmers. This project is next to an elementary school. This project will sit on top of the headwaters of the Johnson Creek and our community's groundwater within the Sandy River watershed. Below the proposed site is an aquifer that it is the source of cold, fresh water to salmon and steelhead in the Sandy River. Additionally, 8,000 dry tons of chemicals are needed annually for treatment, forever changing the taste of Portland's cherished drinking water. Why should our community be the sacrificial lamb for an unnecessary city project? This is not a NIMBY issue. This is a community wipeout for a project you want and don't need. We are unincorporated East Multnomah County, and we can't vote for you. Yet you are allowing a mega project to proceed that will destroy our peace, private property, and way of life. The town of Pleasant Home will never be the same as you transform our town into an industrial operation. Portland Water Bureau's subcontracted engineers told us directly that this will do so. Is any government project that snuffs out a small group of people for the greater public good ever a virtuous decision? As an elected official, is that your legacy? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here today. Caller, would you please read the next item?
62, request of injured and pissed off to address council regarding Portland made it to a list.
Good morning. Welcome back. Please state your name and
No, I don't want it. I swear my name's injured and pissed off. What I was addressing the council as November 17th of last year, I signed up for this, and it says Portland, Oregon made it to the turd list. There's other names for that. A turd list could be E. coli or salmonella. They tell you to cook it or boil it. I don't go for that at all. And after 7 dog attacks within 6 years of my service animal, I'd say that it's a dog-eat-dog world here in Portland. If you don't understand that, I've had a broken hip and 2 fractures to my spinal cord, and I took the name injured and pissed off because when I was seeking medical treatment at OHSU, the biggest employer here in Multnomah County, they operated on my hip the next day after they realized after 4 hours I couldn't get up. And then after the next 3 days, they were standing me up with 2 fractures in my spinal cord. And of course, I know that anybody that's had a spinal cord injury would appreciate that sense of humor that they have at their OHSU. And of course, I've got the same sense of humor myself, injured and pissed off that I canceled my Medicare Part B anymore. And I had to go to the hospital last month, and of course the doctors aren't getting paid, so I think that they can figure out what injured and pissed off feels like. And there's an absent chair here in the council chambers. As a child, they used to play musical chairs with music and take a chair away, and that's what they're doing to the homeless people and other people such as myself that had been injured and never got any justice. It's just ice. And with everybody being farmers, with the rain that everybody has and the BS that the council puts out, such as this censorship of today's speech, the FCC isn't going to say anything against me. Saying free speech like that, it's not pornography or anything. Even my name is spelled here wrong at the city council. They just write pissed off as 2 words. It's all 1 word, pissed off.
It's 1 word on my document, sir.
Well, I've seen it where one of the guys spoke here, and when they talked about terrorizing the city council, and they had it spelled as 2 words, pissed off.
Well, I think you made
That's
your
public
point,
records, and they should
and we
be
corrected
typing
it. Thank you so
correctly.
much. We appreciate you being here as always. Item 63, Carla?
Request of Melinda Pittman to address council regarding another perspective on reducing houselessness in Portland.
Good morning, welcome.
Morning.
Please put your name in the record. Your address is not necessary.
Thank you.
Please begin.
Thank you. I'm Melinda Pittman. I'm a parishioner and volunteer at the St. Francis Dining Hall, and I want to thank you, Commissioner Hardesty and Commissioner Udaley, and hi, Amanda, and Mayor, for this opportunity to ask some questions about houselessness. Trump and Moscow Mitch, aren't they a pair? One locks brown kids in a cage, one just doesn't care. Who are these clowns? Who hired these clowns? Tax cuts for the rich, the wealthiest few, while minimum wage doesn't pay for me or for you. Who are these clowns? We've got to send home the clowns. How can we stop slamming shut doors, blaming it all on the weak, the outsiders, the poor? In this city of treasures, our spirits lie bare. If you hold out your hand, will no one be there? I don't think there's time to just wait and see. Old folks sleep outside cold, abandoned, hungry. Low-wage workers get blamed, condemned, and betrayed, while more union jobs just keep going away. Have our hearts been replaced by wallets and wine, by Titan investments, HFF's bottom line? Are we expanding our souls or just fear, greed, and hate? If Christ needed food stamps, would we empty his plate? We'll never be rich if we don't become just. We'll never have justice if compassion is lost. Who are these clowns? We've got to send home the clowns, for the time it is now. and the choices are real. How can we feel safe if we no longer feel? Who are these clowns, these ridiculous clowns? Oh, I fear now, they're here. Thank you. We
Thank you.
invite you, please, to come and spend an afternoon with us and with Portlanders who are suffering and to listen to them. Would you eat with us, please? Come eat with us. And Mayor Wheeler, when you listen to this, would you please stop excluding the parishioners of St. Francis Dining Hall from community meetings held here in City Hall with the powerful police, the Catholic Archdiocese kleptocracy, and business association members who have bought the property around our church? And Mayor, if you're brave enough, you might not shave or wash for a week and get dropped off at 122nd and Powell.
How much more time? How much more do
10
you?
seconds.
Okay.
And I'm talking fast.
Okay.
Without your car, without money, without a cell phone, wearing Goodwill clothes, and try to make it for a week on the streets without calling any of your friends. It's dangerous. But I bet the folks that help you will be houseless too. Thank you. Peace.
Thank you. Let me just tell you, that is the most creative communications I've seen in the time that I've been here. And, you know, I love you. You're a wonderful performer and artist and activist, and I thank you kindly for coming.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Mayor Whitman.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Okay, we are now through with our communications agenda. We're going to go to item 64.
Venture Portland Annual Report to Council.
Venture Portland serves as the support for Portland's 50 neighborhood business districts. They help organize community events, provide training and grants, and add staff capacity to develop business districts in East and North Portland. With us today is Brad James, Interim Executive Director, Matthew Misetic, owner of the Red Castle Games on Foster Boulevard. Welcome back. You were here last year. And the chair of the Venture Portland Board of Directors. Thank you all for being here. Take it away.
All right, well, thank you, Commissioners Udaley and Hardesty, for having us this morning.
Don't forget Fritz.
As well as Fritz. Oh, is Fritz telecommunicating? Hello. Thank you for your, oh, you are. Hi, thank you. As well as, all right. As Commissioner Hardesty introduced me, my name is Matthew Misetic. I'm the president of Venture Portland, as well as the owner of Red Castle Games in Southeast Foster. I've also, in the last year, become a property owner in Foster, as well as signed a long-term lease to secure myself from displacement of my game store. So it's really been a great year for me. And it's also been, I think, a sign of, you know, Foster has been this up-and-coming neighborhood we've been saying since I was a kid. And it really seems to have turned a corner, and that's thanks to a lot of the investment the city has put in, both in terms of the Foster Streetscape project, as well as community improvements like the Laurelwood Shelter and other items that benefit our entire community. So thank you for that investment. But on to Venture Portland's business. So Venture Portland has also had a big year last year. We launched new programs. We stabilized our catalytic investment initiative, which focuses on historically disenfranchised and uninvested in business associations in the city, as well as continued our partnership with City Council. As you know, Venture Portland is the support system for all 50 neighborhood businesses in the city. We are the only entity in Portland that works down at the district level, working with street fairs, working with individual businesses, working with any small business in the city that wants to engage. Venture Portland also promotes these critical commercial corridors and the volunteers that run all these organizations. All of the neighborhood business associations in the city are primarily volunteer-run, and very few like our own may have paid staff, but it's a staff member for about 10 hours a week. So we're a very small-scale operation trying to make an outsized impact on our communities. In the last 23 years, there's been a $1.6 million investment into these districts in partnership with the city that's also leveraged over $5 million in private dollars. So those dollars are being matched over a 3-to-1 basis to make sure that we're improving these commercial corridors for all individuals. As president, I know the strength of our organization has always come through our collective efforts and the belief that small business in Portland is more than just business. It's about our people, our neighborhoods, our communities, our employees, our clients, making sure that's an inclusive environment where we all can enjoy Portland. It's about a vision for our city that business owners, residents, and elected officials can all share and partake in. Over the past year, we've been preparing for the future as we wrap up our 2020 strategic plan and we determine priorities to support business districts into the future. Our Community Engagement Committee, led by my colleague Liz here, has been working on updating our organizational values, creating an equity statement, and preparing for our annual strategy summit this February. Every year, we meet with business district leaders from across the city to report on progress toward accomplishing our strategic plan, to take the pulse of the business district community, and to also set goals moving forward. Internally, we've been making important updates to our trainings, technical assistance, and resources to better respond to the needs of business districts in all parts of the city and really adapt to our rapidly evolving city and economy. You may have noticed there's a different person sitting next to me at the far end of the table, and that's Brad, our new interim executive director. In December, Heather Hole stepped down after 10 remarkable years with Venture Portland. It was thanks to her strong leadership, vision, and unwavering support of Venture Portland that we are the strong organization that we are today and has set us up for success going into the future. To help us complete the strategic planning process and set the organization up for success, we want to really make sure that we have all stakeholders' input moving forward with our strategic plan. Brad is going to be reaching out, if he's not reached out already, to each of your individual offices, because we also want to make sure we have all of your input. Many of you recognize Brad as the first hire of the Catalytic Investment Initiative back in 2015. He has more than a decade of experience with nonprofits. He's also guided nonprofits through change management, which is exactly where we are. So he's the perfect individual for that. He's also worked in economic development, managing commercial districts. He's worked in the Catalytic Investment Initiative, so he knows exactly what everyone in our organization is doing. And he's also worked with the award-winning downtowns of Oregon City and McMinnville. Our board of directors is confident in his experience and deep familiarity with Venture Portland's work, and we're sure it's going to help set us and him up for success. And with that, I'll turn it over to Brad.
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning, commissioners. As Matthew said, I previously worked at Venture Portland, helping to manage the Catalytic Investment Initiative, and as Heather's executive assistant. I got to see firsthand the behind the scenes that made her tenure at Venture Portland so successful. Heather's contributions were invaluable, and her leadership resulted in unprecedented growth for the organization. A few of her accomplishments include rebranding the very easy to say Alliance of Portland Neighborhood Business Associations to Venture Portland with a new logo, programs, website, social media, and manifesto. Increasing business district membership 154% citywide by helping districts become more diverse, equitable, and welcoming. Increasing district staffing 175% since 2013 by helping districts hire ongoing professional district organizers, 21 of them doing so for the very first time, and investing over $800,000 in business districts for 294 projects that together leveraged $3 million, an almost 4-to-1 match. Also, changing the conversation locally about the value of shopping locally in Portland by securing nearly 1,000 positive media stories. We're grateful to have had Heather's leadership for the past 10 years, and we are very excited about the coming decade. Venture Portland supports Portland's neighborhood business districts. If you're in a business and you're not downtown, you're probably in a neighborhood business district. Together, these districts contain 23,600 businesses and provide 308,000 jobs. This is a huge sector of Portland's economy, and the vast majority of them are small businesses. The fundamental goal of our work is to help these districts be more successful and create a more robust economy. The following brief overview provides a snapshot of our work over the past 12 months. After 9 years of sustained double-digit growth, Venture Portland once again expanded our access to capacity building services. Our training and technical assistance program is designed to help business districts meet the real on-the-ground challenges they and their businesses are facing today. Topics cover everything from creating enhanced services districts, asset mapping in diverse and rapidly changing districts, inclusive outreach, marketing, creating successful district events, economic resiliency in the face of online competition or unexpected hardships, and the legal responsibilities of nonprofit officers. In total, we increased participation in our training and technical assistance program 39% over last year, with more than 400 business district leaders attending one of 46 trainings. Last year, we addressed 649 district-specific requests from business districts citywide, a 9% increase over what we reported to you last year. For those of you doing the mental math, which is probably none of you, but I did it, that is 1.8 times a day, 365 days a year. A district calls us and asks us for support that falls outside of the, here's a template I can email you in 10 seconds category. We're talking custom solutions tailored to a district's specific needs. This in-depth, personalized support helped districts successfully navigate major leadership transitions and effectively manage significant business mix, built form, and demographic changes among a multitude of other varied, occasionally random, but equally important things districts face every day. To that end, over the last year, Venture Portland provided 3,560 hours of training and technical assistance to business district leaders citywide. That is a 34% increase over 2018. Keeping in mind that our staff has not increased by 34% or any percent, Venture Portland continues to be a nimble, adaptive organization able to respond to district needs and deliver high-quality services by continually refining, streamlining, and updating our approach to the work at hand. Venture Portland's grant program helps business districts make strategic investments in a vibrant economy and strong sense of place unique to each district. Funds can be used for a number of things that fall under one of our benchmarks or markers of success for a strong business district. District identity projects, signature events, marketing and asset development, or larger scale economic development projects. In 2019, we awarded more than $85,000 for 26 projects, leveraging more than $230,000 in additional district investment. That's nearly a 3-to-1 match. From our perspective, that makes these some of the most efficient dollars that the city spends, so thank you. We also continued our partnership with Travel Portland on our destination investment grant that helped districts invest in significant physical improvements that benefit both customers locally and visitors. As you all know, neighborhood business districts are not only essential components of Portland's livability, but are a significant tourism asset. The grants directly contribute to Portland's international appeal. Finally, 2/3 of our total grants went to underserved districts in East and North Portland. As I'm sure you're well aware, a huge portion of Portland businesses are neighborhood-based, which means neighborhood business districts truly are a driving force for Portland's economy, culture, and sense of place. This is not my first rodeo with managing commercial districts, and I often hear from people that you reach a tipping point where development and the natural free market takes over and makes a place unique and beautiful and fun. But I'm here to remind us that that's just not true. Without business districts advocating for smart planning and growth, fostering a healthy mix of neighborhood-serving businesses, creating innovative events tailored to the assets and quirks of each district, and partnering with residents on creative place-making projects, Division Clinton wouldn't feel different than Mississippi, than Northwest District, than Multnomah Village, than Lentz, than Montevilla, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Each district has their own vibe, and we believe that vibe is driven by their unique, locally owned businesses. One of the key ways business districts bring residents and visitors to showcase their unique districts and cultural assets is by putting on some exceptional events, shopping promotions, and festivals. In 2019, districts put on more than 80 events and promotions, bringing more than 1 million customers to locally owned businesses' front doors. All year, and especially during the holidays, Venture Portland ensured cash registers rang citywide. In 2019, Venture Portland helped launch or expand 17 events between Halloween and New Year's. These free, family-friendly celebrations feature festive lights, holiday treats, shopping discounts to help Portlanders stretch their holiday dollars. And with 70% of every dollar spent in local businesses staying in Portland's economy, business districts are doing their part to ensure that Portland's economy thrives.
Can I stop you for a second? I got a question.
Yeah.
How many, let's take one business district. How many businesses are connected to the business district and working with Venture Portland as compared to how many businesses actually exist in that business district?
Yeah, great question. It's going to vary by district and how active they are and how many businesses there are. Our overarching goal is to ensure that at least half of the existing businesses in a district are connected with the association and participating. And we'll have the final results at our strategy summit this February, but we're pretty close to accomplishing that across the board in the city.
Thank you.
Yeah. In 2019, we helped City Council and bureaus connect with neighborhood businesses. Commissioner Udaley, we worked with your office to coordinate the Foster Streetscape ribbon cutting. We have a wonderful photo of you up there. We worked with Mayor Wheeler's office to help connect districts with his anti-hate and shop local press events. We worked with BES and PBOT to mitigate the impact of major construction on districts. We help districts understand and navigate new land use notifications. Thank you all for continuing to send those out. We maintained our age-friendly business and sustainability at work certifications. We supported neighborhood economic development, including neighborhood prosperity initiatives, and we joined as an early adopter for Portland Means Progress. As you all also know, we helped facilitate City Council testimony for Central Eastside, Foster, Hawthorne, Northwest Industrial, Multnomah Village, and Stadium districts. These districts all greatly appreciate the time they had in front of you to share their stories, their successes, their challenges, and their requests for support. So thank you for the time and consideration that you gave each of them, and know that we intend to introduce you to more districts and business owners in the coming year. After our success working with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to design and implement a neighborhood business district demographics database, we're excited to be working with the Police Bureau to finalize feedback on a publicly accessible business district crime summary, giving districts more tools at their disposal to understand and address the complexity and challenges they face. Last, but certainly not least, I want to be sure and recognize Venture Portland's dedicated volunteers. As an independent nonprofit, we are able to nimbly respond and adapt to real-time needs of the districts we serve. That would not be possible without our volunteer board. Made up of one representative from each business district, our board contributed 926 volunteer hours last year. That adds up to 0.46 FTE, or nearly 19 hours a week over the year. Our success would not be possible without this incredible commitment that they make. Of course, one of our strongest advocates, Commissioner Nick Fish, is missing today. As a longtime advocate of our work and strong supporter of small, locally owned businesses, his loss was felt deeply by Venture Portland and the business district community. His accomplishments on our behalf are too many to count. I remember him as always willing to show up and lend his support whenever needed. No problem too big, too large, or too small to tackle. Nick Fish consistently helped us promote shopping local during the holiday season, created the inaugural Age-Friendly Business Awards, launched the All-User Restroom Challenge, and so much more. Perhaps one of his greatest impacts on our organization was helping to conceive, plan, and implement the Catalytic Investment Initiative. After noticing how disproportionately East Portland business districts were struggling and that they were not seeing the benefits of the post-recession economy's return as quickly as districts closer to Central City, he and Venture Portland's team put their heads together and with City Council support launched what at the time was a pilot project to see if we could move the needle on East Portland's economy. 2 years later, with Nick's support, we expanded the project into North Portland. This catalytic effort addresses disparity and gentrification in 7 targeted districts. It has 3 short-term goals to increase membership, increase volunteers, and increase revenue. I'm thrilled to report that last year we once again exceeded all of those goals. Once again, we added significant new members across those districts. In 2019, we saw a 27% increase in business district members across East and North Portland. Currently, about a third of business district members are new in those districts. We also saw a 64% increase in volunteerism across districts, diversifying businesses' all volunteer board leadership, so it's more in line with the district demographics and brings new voices and perspectives to the table. And finally, we help districts generate $158,000 in new revenue to support their neighborhood businesses. We've also made significant progress on our long-term goals to create a business support network that crosses district boundaries, creates stronger ties between businesses and residents, and improves district identity and positive public perception of East and North Portland. We help districts launch more than 24 events designed to connect residents with businesses, attracting more than 30,000 customers to make cash registers ring in economically lagging parts of Portland. 17 district cleanups in partnership with neighborhood associations, neighborhood prosperity initiatives, and other organizations. We improved perception of East and North Portland with 65 positive media stories. And we increased district capacity to serve their member businesses with 74 brand new or significantly strengthened member benefits. So, we talked about the overall goals of the program, members, volunteers, money, but what are the methods? We hire professional staff and place them directly in business districts. Business owners are busy. Hiring staff support is one of the greatest lifts to a district's capacity. It also enables us to visit more than 3,000 individual businesses and get direct input on the districts that they are existing in. We provide seed funding to help districts experiment with new programs that can better serve their businesses. New programs take time and resources to get off the ground, so having grant funds to experiment allows membership dues to be spent on existing successful programs. And we provide innovative and personalized assistance to districts. This is not Venture Portland's first rodeo, but for many of the volunteer leaders, it is. Working more closely with them one-on-one allows us to help navigate them in this arena. City Council's ongoing investment in the Catalytic Investment Initiative helped participating business districts generate unprecedented success last year. To share the success of our East Portland districts, I'm happy to introduce you to Venture Portland's Catalytic Investment Initiative Manager, Joy Church.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you, Brad. Good morning.
Good morning.
I know you were busy last night, Commissioner Hardesty,
Just
in
a
my
tad.
neighborhood, in Lentz. I wasn't there. I was at an event supporting, it's called Chocolate for Congo, to support the Congo.
I get invited to that.
Well, you gotta come with me. Anyway, it's nice to see you, Commissioner. The last time I think I saw you was here after the ribbon cutting, which was my first day with Venture Portland on the street, the Foster Streetscape. So it's very nice to see you again. Anyway, and I'm in a new role with Venture Portland. So I started as an organizer on Foster and then helped out with Northeast Broadway. And now I'm the Catalytic Investment Initiative Director. We call it CII for short because Catalytic Investment Initiative does not roll off the tongue.
Roll off the tongue as quickly as you like.
So I've been in this role now for just a couple of months, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. I get to work with amazing organizers who really have education and passion for small business and working with volunteers and putting people together. So it's a real joy to, no pun intended, to be able to work with them around the city and to get to know the city more. So I live in Lentz Foster area, so I was attracted to the Foster position with Venture, but then it has now led me into expanding to help the entire city. So I'm very excited to be a part of it. And our district organizers, something that I think is so important about them is not only are they highly educated, but they are passionate and they are they have perseverance, right? Which is really what it takes to get the job done because, as Brad mentioned, business owners are so busy. And these are independent business owners, so they have a mind of their own about how things are going to happen. So to get everybody in the same room together can be challenging, and to give them that high-level expertise around what does board governance look like? What does volunteering look like? What do those high-level things mean? So they can get a good, firm foundation to then go out and do the fun activities of signature events and street fairs and things like that, and raising revenue for their businesses. All of those things just take a lot more time than you'd expect because they're volunteers, right? So the board members are volunteers only, right? So we've got these amazing organizers who have very little time and they are just out there running. So I'm really excited to be working with them, and I'm really happy to share some of their successes. So as Brad mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about East County and what we're doing there. And we'll start with 82nd Avenue. So as most of us know, we use that as a thoroughfare, but there's a lot of vibrant business on the street, and many people of color own businesses there. So we have a wonderful signature event called Around the World in 82 Dishes, and that's over a period of 2 weeks, and these restaurants put on a $5 dish. So there's a $5 special for those 2 weeks. You can go in, pay your $5, you get a little sticker, and then you can win prizes if you have the most stickers. And it's called Around the World in 82 Dishes, and that's been really successful. So this year, they added an additional $6,000 in revenue from that. So for those people in that area, that was really meaningful for them because, again, oftentimes we just use that as a thoroughfare. We get on the bus, we drive, and we don't think about all of the amazing people that are there. So to focus on what they're doing in their specialty dishes. I know that I, gained a little extra weight for that event. So that again raised the extra $6,000. That was a 20% increase over last year. So again, we'll continue that event because it's proving to go well. So we're very pleased about that. And again, it reflects the diversity of the district with 70% of the participating restaurants owned by people of color. And part of the improvement over the years for the event is that we've been translating the event into Spanish, Vietnamese, traditional, and simplified Chinese so that everyone has an opportunity to understand what's happening and how they can participate and go out and eat for 2 weeks. Let's see here. What else am I going to talk about with this for 82nd? Let's see. I'm going to move on, I think, to Foster because we all love Foster. As we all know, the Foster Streetscape, we have millions of dollars and lots of intentional planning went into that. We're really excited about it, as Matthew mentioned. He's a vital person on the street, and we're very excited to have him on our Foster board as well. And we have a couple signature events that we do on Foster, and one of those is the tasting tour, and that's in the summer. We encourage you to come out for that. That is a one-day, 12-hour event. It's been expanded. This year, because of the great streetscape, we highlighted the street and the biking on the street by hiring pedicabs to take people around from carts to carts, right? Because there are a lot of food cart pods on Foster. And so those pedicabs were really fun. And it kind of focused this idea that the street has changed and that it's safe to come out and bike as a family, to come out and really use the street in a meaningful way. So that was really amazing for us. And this year it generated more than $8,000 in revenue, again, in just 12 hours. And that was a 43% increase this year. So I think we're going to continue doing that, aren't we, Matt? And then we also did a Winterfest event this year. We've been changing that around to address the needs of our neighborhood, but we did a Winterfest event, and we had the Unipiper come out. So that brought out a lot of extra people, and that was a really family-friendly, kid-centric kind of day. And then we added an adults-only component at the end, meaning we went out for beers after and did an ugly sweater contest. But that was a really fun thing that we'll continue to expand on as we have so many lights on the street. It's really beautiful, but we want our neighbors to understand that Foster is a destination. Even when it's rainy and cold, come out and shop. And so that's really the point of Winterfest. Gateway is another great neighborhood, and the Gateway Business District Association in September had this thing called Cruising Gateway, and that's to celebrate Gateway's history of cruise-in culture while updating it from their current district. Thanks to strategic investments from the city, advocacy from the Business Association, and support of partner organizations, there's so many more ways to cruise Gateway. So they've got new bike lanes, the 130s Greenway, investment in e-bikes, and improved walkability as a result of streetscape improvements. This event, called Cruising Gateway, celebrated all the ways Portlanders travel in Gateway, bringing 300 people together to celebrate community and discover new businesses. And that was a big deal. So we say 300 people, and Gateway, that neighborhood and that business district is really spread out. So for 300 people to gather for a new event, it is a big deal, right? We think 300 people. Well, that took a lot of effort, and it will expand year over year. The people that came really loved it. We're very excited to even get it on the schedule for 2020 right away. So that's very meaningful for us. To get 300 people in a room together, again, in that neighborhood is challenging. So we're pleased about that. Sometimes, big numbers, we want to see those, but we're getting there. So for Gateway, that 300 was a lot. So this December, we had the Gateway Winter Fest, which brought 250 residents out to participate in a shop local promotion around our tree lighting event. Now in its second year, Gateway saw an 88% increase in business participation for this community-focused event. So with the Winter Fest, for that, the 250 residents, this was an outdoor event, right, the tree lighting ceremony, and it was meant to be a 3-hour event. The first hour was amazing. 250 people came out, and then it started pouring. pouring. So we felt like we would have seen a lot more people come out since we had 250 in the first hour. But really, it was like truly Portland winter. Anyway, so we're looking at restructuring that event so it may be indoor tree lighting, so we won't have that issue of, winter Portland. Gateway continued their partnership with PBOT, representing business owners on the Halsey-Weidler Streetscape and Halsey 106 groundbreaking. Their newly redesigned website puts special focus on connecting local residents, employees, and business owners to district news, construction and infrastructure updates, and additional resources. So in particular, for these environments where people are really disconnected, they're not all together, like let's say on Hawthorne, where you're walking from business to business, a website, that kind of social media, that can be highly, highly important and impactful. So for us to invest in giving grants for websites, that has been very meaningful, not only for the individual members, but for the residents to have one place that they can go to understand what is available to them in their neighborhood. So thank you again for supporting us so that we can give out grants for this kind of thing. And then we have Midway. So Midway is a little like Gateway. It's long, it's stretched out. It's hard to get people to realize that they're part of this place called Midway and that there is a business district association. So in partnership with the Water and Parks Bureau, Midway expanded its third Midway Thriving event, connecting businesses with district landmarks and key community partners like Johnson Creek Watershed, Arte Soleil, and Lentz Gilbert Church. Updated branding gave Midway Business Association a fresh look for the 21st century. I forgot to bring a tote bag. Anyway, we'll get you some. Strengthening the power of their website, a critical asset for such a geographically large district, where many business owners do not even know they have their own website. So all of this branding kind of stuff is really important too. Those tote bags look beautiful. There are banners now as well that we use for events. And so having that noticeable logo, that has meaning, right? We know that that's an important thing for individual businesses, and it's important for a district. So now we've got people carrying these really highly colorful, awesome-looking tote bags. They're marketing the Midway district, right? So the new brand inspired the design of a first-ever map that beautifully integrates Midway businesses and community landmarks. And look for that, it's coming out early 2020. Midway Business Association continues to be a critical advocacy hub, information disseminator, and sounding board for businesses during the Outer Division Safety Project and Division Transit Project, as well as 122nd Avenue construction. These efforts are strengthened by their ongoing partnership with Division Midway Alliance Neighborhood Prosperity Initiative, that's a mouthful, on business support, events like the Festival of Nations, and advocacy for their shared district.
I like the photo bomb, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is in the background, but.
So as Brad mentioned, the Catalytic Investment Initiative is a part of Venture Portland, and it is helping East Portland districts address economic disparities by creating innovative district-specific events and promotions to drive revenue to businesses. And I have absolutely seen this firsthand in my time at Venture Portland, that the CII piece is working, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. Initiative staffing increases district capacity to partner with the city, neighborhood associations, and community groups to advocate and help shape investment investments in infrastructure, transportation, safety, and public spaces. And with the support of Venture Portland, East Portland districts are making clear progress on their goals to ensure their programming, membership, and board represent the growing diversity of the communities where they live and work. In 2017, City Council supported the expansion of the Catalytic Investment Initiative into North Portland. To share the successes there, I'm happy to introduce Liz Smith, St. John's Boosters Board President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Good morning.
Good morning.
As Joy said, my name is Liz Smith, and I'm the president of the St. John's Boosters Business Association Board as of January 20th, so very new for me. I also chair the St. John's Banner Committee and represent the boosters on Venture Portland's board and own Busy Lizzie Social Media Marketing, a small business consultancy.
That's a very cool name, Busy Lizzie.
That's me. I'm Busy Lizzie. I'm always busy. My neighbors in Kenton have been able to use initiative resources to leverage partnerships and capitalize on district branding to drive sales to Kenton businesses. In September, the Kenton Garage Sale partners with the Neighborhood Association to create a district-wide day of sales for residents and businesses. Their holiday promotion, Wooden Nickel, incentivizes local holiday shopping throughout December. Together, these events increased revenue for businesses 39%. Last May, Kenton kicked off Portland's street fair season with their 10th annual street fair focused on celebrating Paul Bunyan statue's 60th birthday. This fall, Trick or Treat on Denver provided a safe, fun event for 1,200 neighborhood residents to trick or treat at Kenton businesses. The holiday season kicks off in Kenton with their Deck the Paul celebration. This year, 450 residents gathered at the historic Paul Bunyan statue to light Paul's wreath and district-wide tree lights and kick off the Wooden Nickel promotion. So if you haven't seen the bumper stickers around town, St. John's loves St. John's. Like all of Portland, St. John's is changing a lot. With hundreds of new apartments, residents, employees, and commuters in our district, we wanted to make sure our identity didn't get lost in transition. Working with Venture Portland, we secured grant funding to hang 40 beautiful banners over the last 24 months. Our unique banners were designed by a well-known St. John artist, Al Sharif, and reference our district's unique assets, including the river, parks, and historic bridge. St. John's has used initiative resources to strengthen and expand our programming to support businesses and strengthen our business identity. This past spring, St. John's Bites celebrated our district's great eateries and generated $15,000 for businesses over a 10-day promotion. Our pre-Thanksgiving night on the town and our tree lighting, which is the first in Portland, I don't know if you remember, but Commissioner Fish was our initial lighter of the tree, which was a wonderful memory for all of us, brought over more than 1,000 customers to shop and dine at locally owned businesses over 2 days. In response to summer construction projects, we created a Booster Bucks promotion to support impacted businesses and remind customers that St. John's remained open for business during construction. This fall, we expanded our Halloween walk, providing a safe, fun event for more than 1,100 neighborhood residents to trick or treat at St. John's businesses. Additionally, we partnered with the St. John's Parade and Bazaar and Cathedral Park Jazz Festival to host a fundraiser supporting district improvements, including our marquees, public plaza, bench replacements, clock face restoration, and free mini library. Opportunities like these help connect businesses to residents and strengthen St. John's sense of place. And now we'll go on to Williams. Williams District has been a big construction zone for several years. You know this, we know this, everyone knows this. 10 new high-rise buildings, more than 1,000 new apartments, 100,000 square feet of retail, and more than 400,000 square feet of office space opening up is impossible to ignore. So instead, Williams District is focusing on honoring their history while embracing change, and more importantly, supporting their businesses through the challenges that come with massive construction. Williams used Catalytic Investment Initiative funding to continue Walk Williams through the summer months. This monthly event features late business hours, discounts, deals, and district-wide entertainment. This fall, Williams used initiative resources to coordinate a rapid response to businesses who lost revenue during a major street construction closure. By using a charitable giving component to encourage customer spending, they generated $5,900 in revenue for businesses in a single day. This past year, Williams continued their successful community partnerships, bringing residents and businesses together. Their Halloween event provided safe trick-or-treating options for more than 1,600 neighborhood residents. Their holiday season Williams Gives promotion raised more than $2,500 for local residents in need. Funds were distributed through the Boise Elliott School District, Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church, and Self Enhancement Incorporated. And the Business Association continued to serve as a critical advocate and point of information for businesses, actively engaging with developers, PBOT, and TriMet, while providing information and construction updates to businesses. Next year, maybe I will sing this portion of the program. Have it flow a little bit more. Right, a tough act to follow, right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. You know, I think it's important to remind folks, when I look at the increase in revenue for businesses, for most of us, if you just look at that on a spreadsheet, you would say, well, that's just a drop in the bucket.
Right.
And I think it's a good reminder that most of our businesses are very small businesses that are really operating on the edge. And so it's a wonderful visual to remind us that none of these small shops are making fortunes, right? They are community resources that we should tap into and support. So I think the visual really highlights that. Thank you.
Yes, I agree.
Excuse me for a sec. Commissioner Udaley.
No.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for the report. It was a pleasure to work with Venture Portland while I was on the Historic Mississippi Business Association, another one that doesn't really roll off the tongue, HMBA. You're doing great work. I have a ton of questions, and I've just decided to schedule a meeting with you instead of asking all those questions right now. But I do want to say I am very supportive of the Catalytic Investment Initiative. Really impressed with your work with business districts on solutions to community-wide challenges, and your equitable grant making. I wanted to clarify, so the business district organizers work 12 hours a week, so you don't have one per district? Do they maybe have 3 districts each, or?
Typically, yeah, they'll have 2 or 3, depending on how many
Okay.
hours they want to work.
So
yeah.
how many people is that total? Or how many?
Right now, that's a good question. About 5.5. I'm gonna half person.
Oh, my,
Yeah, we're a
okay.
small team.
Yeah.
And then we have some support staff as well that are really more in the office, but out on the street, it's just a few of us. So yeah, and it varies. Some people really are closer to 10 hours versus 12, which 2 hours is, is a difference. When I was on Broadway, I had 5 hours.
Okay.
So, it really does vary. We do what we can with the budget. It's all around the budget. If we could, we have one organizer for each at 40 hours a week, right? I mean, that would be
Yeah.
a massive impact, but, we're not there yet.
Yeah. So I look forward to meeting with you, and I'll just highlight a couple things I want to talk about. I'm really interested in bringing the Small Business Advisory Commission back to the city. That's a conversation I tried to initiate when I first got here, didn't get anywhere, but I think it's time to talk about it again. And I'm also very interested in establishing something similar to what they have in San Francisco as far as the Legacy Business Registration and Preservation Fund. We know that small businesses are under threat of cost burdening and displacement, just like residents are. And we have lost some really vital heritage businesses and organizations over the last 10 years. And if there's anything we can do to help them broker a strong lease, like you mentioned earlier, or remain in their historic locations, professional development, technical assistance, which you're doing some of that, but I'd like to see a program. So I look forward to our meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Udaley. Do you have some closing remarks? Because we're going to have to wrap this up.
Yeah. I'll wrap up quickly. Thank you. So to your point about the initiative, we love it also. When we created it, we knew it would have a big impact on the districts that we were targeting it towards. But what we didn't realize that we would stumble on a really great recipe that could work elsewhere. So one of the beautiful things that has come out of it is we've been able to take that model and open it up to districts who were hiring their own privately funded staffers. So instead of them going out and finding someone on Craigslist and them sitting in a co-working space or reinventing the wheel, we offered them the chance to tap into the resources and things that we had already created. And so with that, we are able to, right now we do that with 5 districts, and we're seeing the same overwhelming results that you have in your report with those folks as well. And then briefly, I do want to highlight a few things. Certainly not news to you, but the city of Portland is facing some pretty unprecedented challenges today, many of which are the result of decades of disinvestment in places, people, and systems of support. Each of you and your teams work very hard on that every day, and we're grateful for your efforts in that regard. But business districts are also doing their part to come up with innovative solutions and creative opportunities to address some of those needs. So in the past year, Central Eastside created the first enhanced services district in 18 years in Portland. They focus on things like cleaning, safety, streetscape improvements, workforce development. The services they're providing are really thoughtful, human-centered, and reflect the needs of businesses, property owners, residents, and people in crisis. Foster Area, as you heard, has spent the last couple of years working with their shelter steering committee to create great solutions and strategies to ensure that all residents, including those in the shelter, are part of the district. And today, their board has a permanent seat for the Laurelwood Center Shelter to ensure that partnership continues. Kenton partnered with the Portland Police Bureau to host trainings for businesses on effectively and compassionately dealing with people experiencing mental health crisis. A few years ago, Venture Portland asked the city to adjust your inclement weather messaging to encourage people to stay off the roads, but when possible, to safely walk to your neighborhood businesses. Thank you for that. And to ensure that they held up their end of the bargain, Division Clinton developed a block captain program with stashes of shovels and de-icer that they can distribute and help each other keep the sidewalks clear during those severe weather events. Like many districts, Kenton has a problem with people lighting off fireworks in their public parks. They held a post-July 4th cleanup and collected 8 truckloads of trash to dispose of. St. John's, one of the other amazing things that they do in St. John's is they've really stepped up to be active participants in placemaking for their district. They currently serve as the stewards for the St. John's Public Plaza. They activate the space by helping schedule community events. They ensure that proper permitting occurs. They host monthly cleanups. They host fundraisers to fund larger maintenance projects. They have a rapid response crime watch and reporting with the businesses adjacent to the plaza. And my personal favorite fact about this is they provide the materials for a wonderful gentleman who is a retired business owner who conducts some near daily tidying up of the plaza to ensure that it's well maintained. We also know, because we ask them and they tell us, that local businesses donate to local charities more than twice the rate of national chains. So in 2019, Portland's neighborhood business associations donated more than $100,000 to other local charities citywide. And individual neighborhood businesses collectively contributed more than $1 million to help keep Portland a wonderful place to live, work, and play for all. As mentioned previously, Venture Portland works with these districts to develop diversity strategies to help them understand the demographic makeup of their district and set goals to ensure their membership and leadership is reflective of the actual place. Understanding and using this information has been a key component of our 3-part diversity, equity, and inclusion training series this year. It underpins the initiative's diversity benchmarks and most recently helped Central Eastside designate specific board categories for their enhanced services district. For me, what is one of the most interesting aspects of that work is I don't know that anybody else is walking around the streets talking to business owners and collecting information about their demographics. Who are the people who own the business in terms of race, gender, age, primary language spoken, if they're immigrants or second generation, things like that. That really helps us to have a better conversation about what are the barriers to starting a business. So we're excited about that work going forward. And our ongoing public-private partnership truly drives Portland's economy. As I hope I have made abundantly clear in this presentation, our primary goal is to ensure the economic viability of our neighborhood business districts, which means when they succeed, Portland succeeds. Thank you for your continued partnership.
Thank you very much. I know I'm rushing you just a tad, but we've got a full agenda today, and you have laid out more than enough information
Good.
For us to contemplate.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Colleagues, do you have any questions or statements? Caller, would you call the roll to accept the report?
Yeah, motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any people signed up? Oh, it's a report, so never mind.
So motion, I move the
Accept-
report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Caller, call the roll.
Fritz?
It's really difficult participating remotely with the delay. But thank you very much for that presentation. It was really good on the television as well as in person, I'm sure. Thank you, first of all, to Commissioner Fish, who was, as you said, and many times, such a great supporter of Venture Portland. And thanks to Jamie Dunphy, his senior policy advisor, for continuing the great work and providing such a lot of support over many years. Thank you to Heather Hale, who, as was mentioned, gave 10 years of amazing leadership. And thanks to Brad Faulkner for taking over or stepping in. The new leadership team is really inspiring. You know, Portlanders love our neighborhood business districts, and this is one reason that we need to focus new housing in places where people can walk to their neighborhood businesses and enjoy them without without having to drive there. And I appreciated especially the note about giving to charity, and I know that many local businesses are very generous with their time and talents and treasure in supporting all kinds of different community organizations right here in Portland. So thank you very much. It's really a credit. I was reminded, I was thinking to myself of Commissioner Fish's effort to bring more park services to East Portland when he was park commissioner in his first term, and how the greater community somehow didn't want to invest in East Portland. But then when he tried again with the business district and making sure that the benefits are spread to East Portland, North Portland, and in African American communities in the Northeast, it's been so much more successful. And so I'm glad to see that we're making progress incrementally and also in leaps and bounds. And I'm happy to accept the report. Aye.
You Daly?
Well, thank you again for being here, and thank you for your acknowledgement of Commissioner Fish. He quietly did a lot of really innovative work across the city in multiple arenas. So thank you for helping us continue to honor him. And I look forward to meeting with you soon. I vote aye.
Hardesty?
I want to also thank you for your very detailed report. There seems to be a sense of excitement that continues with Venture Portland and the work that you're doing in local communities. I'm looking forward to a tour that I'm doing soon in Central East Side because we did set up that service district different than all the other ones that had been set up previously, really centering people as compared to centering some other activity. And so I'm looking forward to seeing it in action. Thank you for the work that you do. I vote aye. Thank you for being here today. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back and continue with the agenda.
We are back in session. Carla, have any items been pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, we've had a request for 69, 70, and 72.
Please call the roll on the remainder of the consent.
Fritz?
Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. Please call times certain items 65 and 66 together, please.
Item 65, amend the introduction, modal plans, implementation strategies, and glossary chapters of the 2035 Transportation System Plan. And 66, amend the 2035 Transportation System Plan and the 2035 Comprehensive Plan in compliance with the Regional Transportation Plan, adopt findings of compliance.
Commissioner Udaly.
Thank you, Mayor. The Transportation System Plan is a 20-year plan that provides guidance for how we will get around in a growing city. To do this well, it can't be a static plan. It must be regularly updated based on facts and sound analysis. This is especially important as we continue to face a climate crisis and to overcome historic inequities in transportation investments. We must have both a sense of urgency to move quickly and to have a long-range vision for what we're trying to achieve. This update incorporates the planning that has been done since the adoption of the 2035 TSP. It brings in recommendations from PED-PDX, the Growing Transit Communities Plan, and the Enhanced Transit Corridors Plan. These recommendations represent the aspirations of the community and the hundreds of hours of time community members spent working on the development of these plans. The update also supports the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan, which Metro passed in 2018, and maintains compliance with this important regional plan. All of these updates are considered minor and technical. Moving forward, PBOT will be reviewing the TSP on a biannual basis, so there will be plenty of opportunity for people to engage on that larger conversation starting very soon. Before I invite staff to present on this item, I'd like to offer 2 amendments. Amendment number 1, include the new projects and project amendments from Southwest in Motion and Building Healthy Connected Communities along the Division Transit Corridor Plan as listed in the Amendment 1 table. The justification for this amendment is that in December 2019, Council passed by resolution, the Southwest in Motion Plan and the Building Healthy Connected Communities along the Could someone have come up with a longer title for that, by the way?
No.
Along the Division Transit Corridor Report, both plans included recommended projects to be included on the TSP major projects list. Because of timing and scheduling, the projects weren't considered by the PSC in November as part of this TSP update. Since these plans have been adopted by council, it makes administrative sense to include these recommendations as part of this update. Amendment number 2 is to remove the proposed major city walkway pedestrian classification for the entirety of the private Southwest Campus Drive from Southwest Sam Jackson Park Road to Southwest Terwilliger Boulevard. The entirety of the private Southwest Campus Drive from Southwest Sam Jackson Park Road to Southwest Terwilliger Boulevard shall not have a pedestrian classification. The justification for this is that Southwest Campus Drive is a private street that goes through the OHSU campus. As part of PED-PDX, it was recommended to have a major city walkway pedestrian classification, and that is the proposed designation that is included in this TSP update. PED-PDX tried to avoid placing classifications on private streets since it is a private street, and to be consistent with the approach taken in PED-PDX, it should not have a pedestrian classification.
I'll second both, and we'll keep them open and listen if there's any testimony on these items.
Great, thanks. Now I'd like to invite Eric Hess and Bob Kellett from PBOT to provide overview of the TSP update. And hopefully I won't have to say Terwilliger again today.
I hope I get the word as well.
And before you jump in, Commissioner, just to be clear, are both amendments related to the resolution or to the ordinance?
These are both before the ordinance.
Both related to the ordinance. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Eric Hesse, for the record. I manage our policy section of our planning division at the Bureau of Transportation. We're responsible for the maintenance and update of this plan, so we very much appreciate the opportunity to bring this to you today after engaging with our community members and a number of our other bureaus on this work to do this minor technical update. Appreciate also the Commissioner's note of us moving to a more frequent cycle so that we can continue to engage as the city obviously rapidly evolves, and we need to continue to update our transportation system accordingly. So we look forward to doing that, and I really appreciate Bob Kellett on our staff, who's been the project manager for this update and has been very thoughtful about building that ongoing cycle into the future. So we look forward to engaging with you on that and what will be a more significant policy refresh moving forward.
Right.
Thank you.
Good idea.
Turn to Bob to present the summary information.
All right, thank you, Eric. Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners, my name is Bob Kellett. I'm a planner with the Portland Bureau of Transportation. Eric has provided a little bit of context about the update today, and I will provide a brief overview of the substance of what is being updated. So just as a bit of background, how we got here today, the 2035 Transportation System Plan was adopted by City Council in 3 stages between December 2016 and May 2018. It became effective in June 2018. The first 2 stages of that update were part of the state periodic review of the 2035 Comprehensive Plan. So the TSP is the state mandated transportation element of the comprehensive plan. This update, as we've mentioned, is technical, administrative in nature, and it only amends a small portion of what you all adopted in the 2035 Transportation System Plan. This update has followed a legislative process, first with a discussion draft that was open for public comment, followed by a proposed draft, also with public comment. The Planning and Sustainability Commission held a hearing on November 19th and voted on the recommended draft that is before you today. Why are we amending the 2035 TSP? The reason why is that a number of the plans and projects that serve as inputs into the Transportation System Plan have been adopted since the adoption of the TSP. These include PED PDX, which you all adopted in June 2019 as the city's new pedestrian master plan. The Enhanced Transit Corridors Plan, which was adopted by Council in June 2018, which is a plan that's looking to improve the speed and reliability of transit in our city. And then there's the Growing Transit Communities Plan, which was adopted in September 2017. And that's a plan that looked at increasing and improving access to transit in 3 community corridors in East Portland. And then finally, there's the regional plan, the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan, which was adopted by Metro Council in December of 2018. And the Regional Transportation Plan is kind of the region's transportation system plan, and the TSP has to maintain consistency. And so as part of this update, we'll be maintaining consistency with what was adopted by Metro Council in December 2018. And all of these actions also help to further implement the comprehensive plan, just another layer of planning that the transportation system plan is part of. So what are we changing? This falls into 4 categories, and I'll go through each of them: the policies, classifications, major projects, and the supporting chapters of the TSP. First, with the policies, we're proposing minor changes to a handful of existing TSP policies, including an edit to our policy 9.22, which is related to public transportation. This comes from a recommendation from the Enhanced Transit Corridors Plan. We have a couple of housekeeping corrections that we're adjusting for policy 9.49, as well as our community involvement objectives. And then we're broadening policies 9.68 and 9.69.
One moment. Commissioner Hardesty.
Excuse me, could you give us a 1-sentence description of what's being updated as, excuse me, as it relates to each of these policy areas?
Sure. So the policy 9.22, public transportation, it's essentially adding language that says that for trips that are 3 miles or longer, we want to be able to prioritize public transportation in that regard. We want to try to make it easier for people to get longer trips.
So that is a good thing to have on a public record, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Policy 9.49, we adopted, it's a performance standards that we do to measure vehicle delay. And so we adopted it as part of the transportation system plan, but it didn't, the table that was adopted was not part of the comprehensive plan. So it's just bringing that into alignment. The community involvement objectives, as part of the update to the comprehensive plan, we got rid of the term objectives and made them sub-policies. And so that's what we're doing with that housekeeping. And then policies 9.68 and 9.69 are related to kind of the future, connected autonomous vehicles. And so we are trying to get ahead of what we anticipate is going to be coming out on the roads. In the interim, of course, we've seen new technologies like e-scooters and other things that are emerging. And so we're trying to broaden that policy so that we can at least have the broader framework of how we want to address emerging technologies.
Thank you, that's very helpful for me.
Great.
Hopefully for the public as well.
Yes, and please stop me. I know this is often very technical, so I'm happy to take a breath and pause. Next up are classifications. So the classifications describe kind of how a road or a corridor is used today as well as in the future. So the proposed changes from this update, we're bringing in the proposed pedestrian classifications and descriptions as they were recommended in PED-PDX. We're changing some bicycle classifications. We have two layers of bicycle classifications. One is a city bikeway, the next is a major city bikeway. And so we're changing for portions of 4 existing bikeways, the 20s bikeway, the 50s bikeway, Southeast Foster, as well as Northeast and Southeast 148th. And so we're doing that because in the regional transportation system plan, or regional transportation plan, the classifications are a little bit off. And then finally, we're also changing the bicycle classification on Sandy Boulevard. And then finally, in the process of doing this update, of course, we've discovered some technical errors, so we're correcting for mapping errors for the bicycle emergency response and design classifications. We want to thank various bureaus for pointing those out to us. We work closely with the Fire Bureau, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, so we're making sure that our policy direction is the same as what they are trying to accomplish. The TSP has a list of major projects that will help us accommodate the growth for the next 20 years in the city. And so through this update, we are amending a subset of the existing policies as recommended from the plans that I mentioned earlier, as well as adding some new projects to our financially unconstrained list as recommended through the projects from Growing Transit Communities, Enhanced Transit Corridors, and the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan. So all of these projects, as we develop a TSP list, we put it through a methodology where we evaluate for equity, safety, health, environment, access, costs, and economic benefits. And so we've done that with these projects and feel comfortable adding them to our list based on our evaluations. The final bit that we're changing, and this is part of the resolution, is changing the supporting chapters of the TSP. These are not officially part of the comprehensive plan, but they help to explain what the TSP is and how we implement it and what we're going to go forward with. And so we're updating those to improve the readability, clarity. We're shortening it, so we recognize this is a big, lengthy document that's not always very accessible. So every time that we update, we want to make it more accessible, shorter, easier to understand. And so that's our intention here. I really want to thank everybody along the way who's provided feedback and comment. We've gotten some really good feedback from community members. I know it's not always easy to access a document like this. I want to thank people who showed up today to testify as well, because it really is valuable to hear from community members, what we can do to make things better. And also the members who contributed to plans like PED-PDX. It's a lot of community time spent on these plans, and I really do value what they've done to help us to get to where we are today. So some of the things you may hear today, we've heard as well. We've heard discussions about the bicycle classification on Sandy Boulevard. That was something that came up at the Planning and Sustainability Commission, and we have Commissioner Chris Smith here today. He can talk a little bit about that. You might hear about how some of the pedestrian classifications will be implemented moving forward. And then there are some, we've had conversations about projects that are currently in the TSP, like the Red Electric Trail, the Green Loop, and then some along what Commissioner Udaley did with her amendment, the Southwest in Motion planning projects as well. So what we'll be asking is the ordinance is the components of the comprehensive plan, and then the resolution is the TSP's supporting sections. So today you're going to hear testimony, and we heard the amendments, offer any other amendments, and then we would anticipate a second reading and a final vote on February 5th. So with that, I just want to close by thanking a lot of people, because even though this is a minor technical update, it takes a big effort. First, I want to thank my colleagues at PBOT. We have an excellent team that has worked really hard for many years to do this. I also want to thank the staff at other bureaus for their collaboration, including the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, who are excellent partners in this. Parks Bureau, we've had great conversations, BDS, Fire, many others, as well as our regional partners at Metro, TriMet, and ODOT. They've all been very helpful as we've moved forward with that. So with that, I want to thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. And are your colleagues who worked with you, are some of them here today?
They're back there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now,
Very quick, you were like, I gotta get through this, I can get away from you.
Want to let Bob present the information.
he loves it here.
He didn't feel like, it didn't look like he was like wanting to be there.
All right, well, we are busy over at the Bureau, so. Next up, we have invited testimony, correct? PSC Commissioner Chris Smith to summarize the Planning and Sustainability Commission's recommended draft. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Please state your name for the record, even though yeah, welcome back, Chris. Can't get enough of this place. Unlike Eric. Please state your name for the record, even though I just said it 5 times.
Good morning. Chris
Yeah.
Smith, member of the Planning and Sustainability Commission, presenting the PSC recommendation.
Good morning, Chris.
A few things I'd like to highlight. First is our excitement at including the 2 transit projects in PED PDX. These are important projects for our ongoing goals of modal shift within the city, and it's great to include these in the TSP. I want to highlight a couple of conversations that happened during our briefing process, don't actually show up in formal motions, but I think are important. One was around privacy. There is language in this TSP update about how we treat and anonymize user data for things like scooters and other modes that are starting to throw off a lot of data. We talked about how that reconciles with the privacy standards that have been created through our open data and smart cities initiatives, and there's work happening at that intersection, and we just want to highlight that and encourage that work to continue. Bob also touched on the autonomous vehicle section, and that was an important conversation, I think, because during the 3 stages of TSP development that we completed as part of the comp plan, we really focused on autonomy, which appeared to be the big technical innovation coming down the road. And anytime you try to predict technology, you're at high risk of being wrong. We didn't see the scooters coming, but what's really happened is that between the ability of apps to locate resources, aggregate users, and then the changes in technology in batteries and motors, we have a whole new phase of micromobility happening. And whether that's going to look like scooters or e-bikes, there's the potential for much smaller vehicles to help move people around, and that's very complementary to our people movement strategy in the TSP. So that whole section got renamed New Mobility, and it's kind of a broader set of thinking, and I think it's important to realize that we're encompassing a bigger set of technical innovations that are happening in the marketplace. I want to talk a little bit about the bike lane on Sandy. This actually goes back to a conversation we had in the comp plan. Some of you may recall that we had adopted the bicycle master plan back in 2010, didn't actually integrate it into the TSP and comp plan until the second or third update, 2017, 2018. So the bikeway network there was already 7 or 8 years old. And we asked the question, things have changed. We've built some new things, other things have changed. Should we be re-examining the major city bikeway network? And staff at that time said, no, the right time to do that is when we reconcile the TSP with the regional transportation plan. So when this process started, we had a new set of faces at staff. So we reminded them of that conversation several years ago and replayed the tape and said, oh yeah, you did promise to do that. So we had a good conversation about that, and the Metro model pointed to a number of segments that should be added to the major city bikeway, including Foster Boulevard, which we've done a modest round of streetscape and bike improvements on, but because of its diagonal nature is potentially a pretty important bicycle connection. It did not include Sandy, so we brought that up and noticed in particular that Sandy Boulevard has the highest available classification for walking, for transit, for automobile traffic, and for freight. But it only has the ordinary classification for bicycle movement. So we said that's really not consistent with Comp Plan Policy 9.6, which is our strategy for people movement that says the priorities are walking, biking, transit, and then motor vehicles. So we unanimously recommended to add a major city bikeway classification to Sandy. So that's why, even though it didn't show up in the Metro model, it's that other diagonal connector that will be an important bike route in the future. We wanted to make sure it was appropriately classified. Two final thoughts. One is that we knew that Southwest in Motion was in play as we were doing this. It wasn't adopted by the time we made our recommendation, but we specifically put in our letter that if Southwest in Motion gets adopted, you should include it in this update. So we're very much in favor of the amendment number 1 that the commissioner has proposed. And the commission as a whole wanted to highlight how important these modal changes are to our climate change strategy, reducing the amount of vehicle miles traveled, reducing the greenhouse gases. So these are all important steps forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that is it for the presentation and invited testimony. I'm handing it back to you, Mayor.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do we have others signed up for either the resolution or the ordinance, 66 or 67? I'm sorry, 65 or 66? Very good.
First three, who's coming up, are Terry Parker, Maggie. Terry Parker, Maggie, Charles Bridgecrane Johnson.
Very good. 3 minutes. Name for the record, please. The microphones slide around. And about 6 inches is the right distance. You're all pros at this, though.
Thank you for the 3 minutes. I appreciate it. My name's Terry Parker. I live in Northeast Portland. Changing the classification of Sandy Boulevard from a city bikeway to a major city bikeway is not a minor TSP update. For Northeast Portland, it's a major update that will have negative impacts on livability. Removing a full-service traffic lane to add dedicated lanes of privilege for bicyclists, which is what I understand PBOT wants to do, will significantly increase congestion, increase fuel consumption, and increase emissions. Although some drivers will disperse to other already congested routes, the plan will not reduce the number of cars. Cut-through traffic will increase. Any removal of on-street parking, possibly due to the Rose Lane project, will create a negative impact for the small and minority businesses that line Sandy and double the negative impacts on nearby residential streets. Everything will simply not fit on Sandy. It is my understanding PBOT and ODOT have a binding agreement whereby PBOT cannot make a change to a surface street that would add congestion to I-84. Since I-84 is a relief valve, or since Sandy is a relief valve for I-84, in particular for Washington traffic using the I-205 Glen Jackson Bridge, PBOT cannot reduce the motor vehicle capacity on Sandy without the state being involved. Where's the necessary environmental impact statement? There has not even been a full motor vehicle count on Middle Sandy since October of 2015. Why weren't the impacted neighborhoods directly notified before the Planning Commission railroaded its Ivy Tower recommendation? Almost every time PBOT is mentioned at some of the community meetings I go to, somebody makes a comment, you can't work with PBOT anymore, or PBOT just does whatever they want. PBOT has really lost some trust with the community. In my neighborhood, ignoring objections, PBOT chose the most unsafe route for the 60s bikeway. We still would like that change. You should have all gotten a message from our neighborhood chair on that. Finally, removing traffic lanes or on-street parking are excellent reasons for tax-paying motorists to vote no on renewing the street's 10 cents a gallon gas tax. The reclassification of Sandy Boulevard as a major bikeway needs to be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, I'm going to comment on this in a general way. Since 2018, there's been a $15 tax on new bicycles. I think they should get something for their money. And also, there are a variety of ways to get people out of their cars and into public transportation. And I think we need to work on reducing the number of cars on the road by increasing the number of choices that are available for people to commute. And, so it's really sad that, I love these market-driven things of Uber and Lyft, and it's really sad that there have been some, just like in India, as in here, there have been some attacks on women driving in those cars, and we need to make it safer for these, for customers to use these market-driven, Uber and Lyft. Whether it's we have more women drivers on the road, this would be great for immigrants. They've got those cars with the new $99, lease it for $99 a month. That'd be great for immigrants to for extra money, or anybody else, students, seniors, to drive, these, to be Lyft or be Uber, and, they pay $99 a month on a lease, and they go around. So these are ways to reduce congestion. And also, one more comment, I would like to say that, I traveled in Mexico back in 1994, and I was amazed at how they had a market-driven system and how much less infrastructure they had in terms of their transportation. But I always had transportation, whether it was a Colectivo, which is a microbus, and you can fit like 8 people in there, and they pile the bicycles and the, all on top, or I'm in a cattle car or a bus. The bus drivers were always the nicest people I ever met. So I believe in this. The bus drivers, they're great here too, but we have this enormous behemoth and all this, overhead, and then we have a lousier system. So let's make it a market-driven system and, get people to students, seniors, get them in the Lyfts and the Ubers, and let's make sure they have background checks and, they're specialized maybe to drive women or children or students, so let's make the market-driven safer and get more cars off the road.
Thank you. And Maggie, I know who you are, but could you state your name for the record, please?
Maggie, Portland Homeless Town Hall.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam President, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to take this 93-page awesome glossy brochure and completely digest it for everybody in 3 minutes. But I do want to thank Carla and the PBOT team for getting the 90 pages of the TSP electronically linked so that when people go to the agenda, there it is. Obviously, we can't be comprehensive about it. Generally, I like EIS, one that tells us that a Rose Quarter freeway expansion is insane. We have interestingly talked about the TSP without mentioning the idiocy of expanding the freeway around the Rose Quarter, hopefully because everybody's beginning to realize that is a dead, dumb idea. Thank you, Governor Brown, even for getting on that. When we talk about intermodality, some different changes are happening. We used to have a very large kind of Saudi Arabian airport canopy-styled Greyhound bus station. We don't have that anymore. There used to be a bunch of homeless people sleeping in front of it, but they got swept yesterday. And it's very hard to believe that this town gives a crap about pedestrians, because what you, through your Portland Development Condition, did is fence off with ugly, cheap chain link the covered walkway that covers people from the rain when they walk from the Max stop to the Union Station Amtrak station. So when we look at the boots on the ground's impacts right here in the heart of downtown, there's not pedestrian sensitivity. There's anti-homeless chain link fence is more important than pedestrians. Elderly people taking their wheeled luggage back and forth from the Greyhound station were like, screw y'all, we had to fence you out into the rain because we had to fence closed the covered sidewalk that was part of the architecture for that building. Later on, we'll have to have a conversation about that building and that lot. Sandy came up. If the idea of an impact study killed off the Rose Quarter freeway expansion, I don't know what the proper tack to take is for the bike lane. The one thing I will say as a pedestrian, as an occasional bicyclist, to me, any kind of hypotenuse is very important. So we should make some way for bicycles to safely access Sandy, because as it was described, it's a diagonal cut from the grotto into downtown. Instead of having to zigzag 2 sides of the triangle, you more expeditiously move along one side. I'm not always as a deep a researcher in the so-called some people call it the war on cars, but the cars never die. It's people that die. So I hope that we can hear from PBOT some of the facts, not just the idea that we put groovy bike lane labels on things, but we actually know why it's important to get people in bikes on that diagonal road. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks all three of you. Appreciate it.
Mayor.
Next three.
Commissioner Daly had a comment.
Mr. Johnson, I just want to let you know that the former Greyhound station is privately owned, and the owners of that property would have had to apply for a permit and put up that fence. That wasn't something that PBOT or the city did.
Okay, I know those stations are closely linked to the Prosper Portland and the Portland Development Commission. I'm not sure, but I hadn't had a chance to look at Portland maps. Thank you for your input, though, on that very much.
Thank you both.
Next three are Edith Gillis, Debbie Small, and Don Bach.
Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Commissioner Udaly, for your caring and your integrity, for your staff, and for the Portland Department of Transportation coalescing this. And thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, for making sure that we are looking at more inclusivity and public engagement. I'm grateful for the good intentions, and I'm grateful for the progress, and I want to celebrate and support even more progress. For example, and part of the community engagement is to have us go out to the communities during their hours with free transportation, free parking, childcare, protection, and inclusivity, and translations. Overall, I'm really grateful you're putting walking, then bicycling, public transit, safety. And I'd like us to have multi-use space so that it's also pollinator pathways, greenways, and that we're prepared for the inevitable gas line explosions and the earthquakes, in which we need to have these pathways for us to be able to transport when the roads and vehicles are not accessible. Overall, I'm saying thank you, yes.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Small, and I'm here representing Southwest Trails. I'm vice president of this organization, and we have a long history of advocating for walking and bicycling in the Southwest Portland area. I am here today with two simple things. I have an ask, and then I have a statement of support. And my ask is that there have been, and I'm sorry, I'm looking specifically at the Red Electric Trail, part of the TSP, and there have been two proposed, accepted, approved routes, and I am asking that both of the routes be given equal space, if you will, equally represented in the plan. And that's basically what we are asking. And so the two routes that we're talking about is the one that ends at Willamette Park. And then there is another approved route that ends at the OHSU waterfront pathway, which goes along Slavin. It's my understanding that the one that goes along Slavin is footnoted only without any kind of supporting documentation, and we would ask that both would be treated equally as you consider going forward with the project. And then my statement of support is going to be for the Slavin-Corbett route, and I'll tell you why. We do have a slide 3 that basically, if you could go to slide 3, please. There we go. It's not 3. Anyway, we have slides that show, there we go. And there, I don't see the colors, maybe you see the colors on your screen, but there is one that's kind of like a lime peel green, and that's the Slavin. And then there's the red zigzaggy one there, and that's the one that goes from Willamette. But the one from Slavin provides better access to the public housing facilities that are close to there, which is important when we're looking at access. The walkability of the Slavin is a much easier walking than it is if we looked at the one that goes from Willamette Park. The one from Willamette Park basically is a 253-foot elevation, 8% grade, that goes for about 3,000 plus feet. The Slavin, if we're looking at the construction it needs, we're looking at just 500 to 600 feet of sustained climb with only a 43-foot elevation. So we would express our support for the Slavin, and basically that's why. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Don Bach, Commissioners and Mayor Wheeler. Basically, the reason for this is we've been told by staff it's already in the TSP. However, there's a footnote. There's been a problem with that. In 2011, when the I-5 bridge was let for bid, it was much lower numbers came in than had been expected. A regional officer of the ODOT invited 2 staff people from PBOT and 1 from Parks to potentially look at this where he would fund actually improving it. They told him, as he told me anyway, we're not interested. Why would that be if it's on the TSP? Second, when Metro was going through their planning for the Southwest Corridor, I was told that we don't have to consider the red electric at all because it doesn't affect us. It's at the bottom of the gully. Well, that's a huge investment to make it get there. And number 2, it's not feasible, in my opinion, to build that way, even though Metro's models show huge demand for a accessible way to get into Southwest without being on Barber or Capitol Highway. So we're really saying, and we really want to see as the preferred route, the route that goes from Park Hill Drive in Nebraska to Williger down across what's currently we can do, well, I'll get into the pedestrian thing in a minute, but basically across the new bridge that would be built across the Himes Gully and then connect up to the Hooley Bridge via Slavin Road. And as was noted, that's really an important connection. And you look at all these little zigzags, that's switchbacks. You know, that whole hillside would be basically concrete if we did what Parks is thinking was their preferred alternative. So this is a much more economical way. And then second, following up on that, we, Southwest Trails, are capable of building a pedestrian trail that would get us from the, would get us from Slavin Road, about 700 feet of construction there. And then in addition to that, we could build short segments of trail in Portland Parks, the Himes Park. We're very experienced at doing this. We got back, as you saw in the testimony, I won't go through in detail, but a long explanation from Parks that we can't do it because of all kinds of reasons that are, in my view, total nonsense and not true nor valid. And it's the kind of thing where we can open up a pedestrian connection for a lot of people who are in the low-income area that's identified on the earlier slide to show them, to give them a way to walking to Hillsdale. It also just makes one more avenue where we can move forward. The thing is, in addition to that, is to make sure, because of the change in the TSP, that the current Southwest Corridor planning includes that. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And we have blue ribbons for Human Sex Trafficking Month for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The last person who signed up is Diana Gutman.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, Council. I'm in favor of this amendment. I wanted to say thank you to the presenters, and especially providing the TSP link in the agenda items. I review that every week, and so when going through the City Council agenda, it was really nice being able to have all the information. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think that the bike updates is going to be a really great thing, and even taking the extra mile for correcting the maps, that's vitally important to our city because we are a transit city, whether it is through vehicle, bikes, buses, e-scooters, e-bikes, walking, etc. We are constantly on the move as Portlanders. I I really did have a question, though, for the pedestrian classification implementation. That was a little unclear to me, and so I was hoping to get a little more clarity as far as what's going into that, how that affects a pedestrian in general, and really, what is that? I've been reading through it, and I'm not understanding that, so that is my question. And then lastly, I'm listening to public testimony, and I want to acknowledge someone that was speaking about having equal attentiveness to the two pathways that are going to be updated and improved. And I think that is so, so important to have that attentiveness so that the pathways for the Willamette Park and then even for OHSU would be something safe for all Portlanders to travel on, and even people who are visiting our city will be able to enjoy that pathway just as well. And so with that said, this is going to have a lot of great things for our city. We're not done here, and I'm excited and encouraged for this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Diana, I just want you to know that PBOT staff were taking notes, and so I think they're going to have answers to your questions because they were listening intently and writing. So appreciate you being here. And I also want to say, good for you. That's the only part of that document that you didn't understand, because there's a lot of info in that document, right?
It was a little confusing.
Yeah, so I just want to say congratulations, right? For a layperson to read through all that document and you only had the two questions that you had, I'm amazed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor,
Thank you. Commissioner Daly.
I'd like to call Bob Kellett back up to the table, please. Mr. Kellett?
Eric doesn't get to come up again. No, I'm joking.
He's like, no.
You know, I was just taking a stab at who might want to answer the issues raised by Southwest Trails advocates.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I really want to appreciate and honor the Southwest Trails folks. They are tremendous advocates for their community, our community, and we share with them the enthusiasm and excitement for getting the Red Electric Trail built so that it serves the people of Southwest Portland and all of Portland. It's an important regional connection as well. And so the Red Electric Trail is currently in the TSP in 6 different segments. And it was adopted in the TSP based on the Red Electric Trail study, which PBOT and the Parks Bureau jointly did back in about 2005. And so in the TSP, the segment that was brought to your attention today, it says basically build the Red Electric Trail as referred to in this Red Electric Trail study. And so in the Red Electric Trail study, it does have a few different alternative paths for how the trail can go. The TSP isn't saying it has to be one way or the other. It's just saying we want this trail built. And so when we get to the project level, which is when we actually would build the trail, that's when those decisions would be made based on feedback from the community, what makes the most sense, financial constraints, topography, et cetera.
And there will be opportunity for public input at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talked with the Parks Bureau about this issue, and they agreed that there's nothing prohibiting the trail from being built the way it's being described here.
And what's your response to the request for it to be more explicitly referred to in this document?
I don't think the TSP really is the place for that to happen, just because this is kind of the 10,000-foot view, and then the actual alignment needs to take place at the project level.
Okay.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for those explanations. I have to say, if you're talking about Southwest Trails, these folks are the experts, right?
No doubt.
And if they have been volunteering in their community for as many years as they've been volunteering and repairing trails, if they say to me that just having it as a footnote means that it's not at the same level as something else, I would actually really take that into consideration and figure out how to incorporate it so that it does have, so that when we're long gone, other people will look at it and say, no, these things are on equal footing. You know, I really trust these folks because they put their heart and souls into the Southwest Trails. And so I would just encourage you to figure out a way to revise it so that it clearly does reflect that both of those options are on the table. Just depends on who does what first.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner. I really do appreciate those comments as well. And it may be an issue where we don't necessarily have to revise the description of the project, but it's more how we're showing it on the maps.
That's exactly
And
right.
so the maps are not necessarily, tied to a legal requirement. It's more of this is a illustrative alignment. And so we could probably work to do that, to show the maps in different alignments.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Hardesty on this, that well, I believe you are technically correct. I want to be really clear about that. I think the intent should be crystal clear now, in case it does take more than a little bit of time to actually execute. And I also just want to respect the work that Don and others have been doing on this.
Yeah, we'll happily engage with them to make sure that, because we agree with the intent, I think, as well. So we'll just try to do that without adding to the one central map all of the options that could be built on projects that could.
We don't
Right, so
need to do
we'll
that.
absolutely engage in that spirit that you're asking us to.
Thank you.
And there were a couple other items that they raised, right?
Yes, the last testifier had a question about pedestrian classifications and how they are implemented.
Still talking about Southwest Trails.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There were three items, right? Not just the red line? That was the big one. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Just to touch on the pedestrian classifications, and so through PED-PDX, a pedestrian network was identified based on safety and equity and demand, and so the lines that we are proposing are implementing that. How that translates into real life, and not just TSP life, is that when a new building comes in and has to build a frontage, a sidewalk, it can impact the width of the sidewalk or the standards that are in place. In terms of bigger transportation projects, it gives us direction about spacing for crossings and those sort of issues as well. And so in general, the higher the level of the classification, the pedestrian classification, the wider the sidewalks, the more frequent the crossings, et cetera.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Commissioner Fritz, did you have any questions? Very good.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, I do want to wait for Commissioner Hardesty to come back, so why don't we take a 2-minute recess?
Oh, okay.
Very good. back in session. Thank you, everyone. So we've now completed testimony. Item number 65 is a resolution, and at the suggestion of legal counsel, we will move that to February 5th, and I'll get to that in a minute. We will not vote on it today. Item number 66, we have two amendments that are on the table. I believe we can go ahead and vote on those two amendments today, and then we'll move the ordinance to the second reading. So, Carla, on amendment number 1, can you please call the roll?
Fritz?
Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, the amendment's adopted. Amendment number 2, please call the roll.
Fritz?
Thank you for the presentation. Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to everyone here who testified today. And before I vote, I want to apologize to my colleagues for the use of Comic Sans in this PBOT report. Some people think Comic Sans screams fun. It screams something else to me. So I just want to go on record that I don't want to see Comic Sans in any PBOT materials moving forward. And I vote aye.
Wheeler?
I wish I could come up with something that interesting to talk about.
I'm a typography snob. I'm sorry.
I vote aye. The amendment is adopted. So, item number 6, we voted on it. Didn't we just vote on it?
Yes, we did too.
Yes, so we have now approved both amendments, whether you knew it or not. Congratulations. They're good amendments.
Yeah.
though. They're good amendments. So item number 65, which is the resolution, will be continued to February 5th at 11 a.m. for a second reading and final vote. Item number 66 is a non-emergency ordinance. It also moves to second reading as amended. That will also be February 5th at 11 a.m. for a second reading and final vote. And the record is now closed on both items.
Thank you.
And legal counsel is shaking their head yes, so we're good.
Thank you so much for your work.
Oh, yeah. All right, and that gets us to our first regular agenda item. That would be item number 73.
The 2020 Joint Terrorism Task Force Report.
Colleagues, item 73 is a report from the Police Bureau regarding PPB's cooperation with the Joint Terrorism Task Force following the formal withdrawal from the task force in May of 2019. The council is committed to ensuring Portland Police Bureau has clear guidelines on when it can partner with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. City Council Resolution number 37424 and Portland Police Bureau Directive 750.00 spell out the parameters of that engagement and cooperation. Per Resolution 37424, the Chief of Police may, upon the request of the Portland FBI Special Agent in charge, temporarily assign Portland Police Bureau officers to work with the Portland FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force to assist in the investigation of any individual suspected cases of terrorism and/or threats to life, including hate crimes, in or having a direct nexus to the city of Portland where there are reasonable grounds to suspect the subject of the information is or may be involved in criminal conduct. The Chief of Police, while remaining in compliance with Oregon state law, shall request that the FBI JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, share any and all information related to terrorism and/or threats to life, including hate crimes pertinent to the health, safety, and welfare of all people who reside, work, worship, attend school in, and/or recreate in the city of Portland. The Chief of Police shall request that any such information that requires PPB action to be immediately shared with the Portland Police Bureau Criminal Intelligence Unit for review and investigative action. Resolution 37424 required a directive be written by the Portland Police Bureau. Portland Police Bureau Directive 750.00 has been created and adopted. The policy details the specific circumstances when PPB can cooperate with the FBI pertaining to specific threats to our community. Today, the Portland Police Bureau is here to provide a report detailing the frequency with which the FBI's special agent in charge requested the assignment of Portland Police Bureau Criminal Intelligence Unit officers for an investigation, the number of cases that were referred to the Portland Police Bureau by the FBI, the number of cases that were referred to the FBI by PPB, the nature of the closed cases referred to the Portland Police Bureau by the FBI, including the demographics of the person involved and the disposition of those cases. With us today are Chief Resch and Sergeant Simpson to give us a presentation. For the record, there were a number of organizations that submitted letters relative to this report. While the report is fairly specific in terms of what we are asking the Police Bureau to present today, I did ask the Chief to review those letters and comment on the questions raised by those letters. Many of the questions go beyond the scope of this report, but I think it's still healthy for us to have a discussion about some of the issues raised in those letters. So without further ado, Chief, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioner. Thank you for having us. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Simpson to present the report and also hopefully answer the majority of the questions that were presented in the letters as well. And then I will chime in if there's anything specific needed.
Thank you. Very good.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Madam President, members of the council. Would you prefer I read the report throughout or just highlight the main topics? I'd defer to all of you.
I prefer you not read the report.
That's why I'm asking, ma'am.
Okay.
Highlights are sufficient. We've all had time to review.
Ultimately,
it.
so I vote highlight.
Did not
You don't want the long version. We've all had a chance to review the report, and thank you for the report. Why don't you just highlight some of the key issues?
And just for the community's knowledge, there will be a link, so you'll be able to read the entire thing.
And where will people be able to find that link?
You can find that out on our website.
Okay, the Portland Police Bureau website. Thank you.
And it is a fairly brief report, but there's a lot of information. So I'll talk about the main points that the resolution calls for us to do. The resolution was passed in May, and one of the things it established was the Police Bureau created a directive. That directive was created and enacted on January 2nd. Directive process is fairly comprehensive and does require every member of the organization read and acknowledge their understanding of that directive. The resolution also requires that annually the city attorney train members of the Criminal Intelligence Unit on applicable state laws, federal laws, and ensure compliance. That training did occur this January. It did occur last January as well. And the city attorney's office confers with the state attorney general's office. At this point, the city attorney has conveyed that they are not aware of any changes in state or federal law that would preclude us from legally working with the JTTF should there be a request for assignment by the FBI. The four areas that are required in the report are the frequency with which the FBI special agent in charge requested the assignment of PPB CIU officers for an investigation, the number of cases that were referred to the Police Bureau by the FBI, the number of cases that were referred to the FBI by the Portland Police Bureau, and the nature of closed cases referred to the Police Bureau by the FBI, including the demographics of persons investigated and the disposition of those cases. To the first question, the frequency with which the FBI SAC requested the assignment of PPB officers for an investigation, that answer is none. There were no requests that came in post resolution for PPB to assign someone to the FBI. The number of cases that were referred to the Police Bureau by the FBI, there were 10 cases the JTTF referred to the Portland Police Bureau. 9 of them are closed, and I will go over those cases in brief. The number of cases that were referred to the FBI by the Portland Police Bureau, PPB CIU referred 12 cases to the FBI JTTF for their review. The nature of those cases includes bomb threats to critical infrastructure, public buildings, private entities, and houses of worship, threats of mass violence, reports of racially motivated violent extremist and sovereign citizen activity, and threats to public officials. PPB officers took initial reports and conducted preliminary investigation. Of the known individuals involved in those cases, there was one black male and all others white males. Several of those cases did not have identifiable subjects. On the closed cases referred to PPB by the FBI, as I said, there were 10 cases. 9 of those are closed. Out of those 9, the demographics are 8 white males and 1 white female. There is 1 open case that we do expect would be reported in the next year's report, barring anything unforeseen. Would you like me to go over each of those 9 cases, or is that?
I don't think so.
Okay, just want to clarify. Regarding oversight and improving processes moving forward, as stated last year, all PPB officers are required to follow all directives and policies, state laws, and applicable federal laws, whether they're working with the FBI or without the FBI. They are subject to all accountability measures that are covering all Portland City employees as well as Police Bureau employees, regardless of their assignment. If they were to violate any of those actions, it could prompt an investigation resulting in discipline and up to and including termination. Legal violations could also result in a criminal investigation and prosecution. Moving forward, Chief Resch has indicated that she will take a active role in this process and regularly meet with the Criminal Intelligence Unit to review and discuss any information that is going to or from the FBI. That is an added layer of oversight that we are going to do in this next year. And the directive that was enacted in January of 2020 is up for annual review. And so we will specifically seek public feedback as well as council feedback on things that we might need to add or change in our policy. And the feedback that's been given to us so far will certainly be incorporated in review and discussed to determine if we do need to make additions or changes to policy. But we can't change much because there is a resolution that's binding, but we could certainly add or tweak things accordingly. With the feedback was provided to us in the form of letters. The chief and I reviewed those, and there's a couple of areas I'd like to address some of the concerns raised. One of the areas was in the 10 cases that were sent to the Police Bureau, 9 of which were resolved as not involving criminal offenses, one of which is still open. The process piece there is these are incidents or information that is reported to the FBI that is then assessed at their level, and they determine that there's a local nexus, or this should come to Portland for Portland's review and determination of any violations or threat. Once they pass it to us, we do that same process of determining, is the information, is there an active threat? Is the information here a crime? What investigative steps might need to be taken, or what resources do we need to address this issue? So the result of them is that there's no criminal violation, but at the front end, when the reports are taken from people, it's unknown. There may be indicators that there is a crime that may be occurring at some point, which triggers the review. We're very conscious of the state law that prohibits looking at things that aren't crimes and gathering information about people who are exercising their First Amendment rights or otherwise not violating the law. One of the other issues was raised that the report does not get into the same level of detail about the 12 cases that were referred to the FBI as the 10 cases that were referred from the FBI. And that's specific to the resolution, which dictates the layer of information that should be provided. We did add the paragraph that summarizes those 12 cases to provide some context to what we're sending their way. But certainly that concern, we heard that from a couple of commissioners and the community, and that's something we'll discuss for next year's report about ways to expand that level of information to, increase sharing information with the community. The third issue that was raised in a couple of letters was a concern about the Jordan Cove pipeline in southern Oregon and communication between the Police Bureau and the FBI on that matter. It's a little mischaracterized in that there's a lot of information about Jordan Cove out in the public sphere that I'm aware of. We were contacted, the Police Bureau was contacted by a sheriff's office, Coos County Sheriff's Office, asking us if we had any information regarding anyone who was planning to go down to the pipeline protests and commit criminal acts. If we had anything, could we let them know? And our response was, of course, if we have any information about, criminal activity coming your way, we'll let you know. That was the extent of that conversation, and that was between a sheriff's office and the Police Bureau. It really is outside the scope of the JTTF from our angle. We didn't work on anything to do with it there. But that concern about the environmental activism and law enforcement intervention certainly is an important one. It's raised in a number of these letters. And, for clarity's sake, for people in the community, behavior is what we're looking at. So it's not the topic and it's not the affiliation with an ideology that necessarily is going to get law enforcement looking at what's happening. It's what behavior might occur or has occurred or is occurring. So blocking a highway, for example, is a behavior-based issue. We are not concerned with why someone might want to go. It's only if they're planning to commit criminal activity. And I realize it's a fine line for some people, but for us, it's very clear. It's a very bright line for law enforcement. The other issue that came up in one of the letters was regarding Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, being a member of the JTTF. It's actually Homeland Security Investigations. That is a partner agency in Portland. That's a different branch, if you will. ERO is the immigration side. HSI does investigations of things like intellectual property and trafficking of goods in and out of the country. Either way, we are not involved at all with ICE, as clearly stated in both state law, city policy, and directive. It's not been an issue at all for us. There's never even been a question regarding this process and ICE.
Very good.
And the only other thing I would like to add, Commissioner Hardesty, to your question when we met earlier, is I have reviewed all of the cases that were either sent to us or we sent to the FBI, so I am fully up to speed now.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation, if I might.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson, Peter Simpson. I wish your rank Sergeant? Lieutenant?
Sergeant is fine.
Okay. I find it hard to read those things sometimes. Thank you, Sergeant. I appreciate your report, but there's some things I want to make sure that we have on the public record. As you know, the public has a huge interest in whether or not we are cooperating with the Joint Tourism Task Force, and the public was very involved when we actually passed this resolution to really limit how we would be involved with the JTTF. And so one of my first questions is just what I asked you, Chief Reese, when you were in my office, whether or not, how the process works. There is a potential terrorist act that Portland Police is notified of. Can you tell us for the public record kind of what the internal process would be? What would the very first step be in actually determining whether or not you would send this to the Joint Tourism Task Force?
Well, I think as Sergeant Simpson mentioned, and Pete, correct me if I misspeak, is that if we had an incident occur, we would look at it and we would take that investigation to the end of our limit and realize, maybe this doesn't have anything state or city related, but it could have a possible federal nexus. I would be notified by Pete at this point. This is how we're doing it moving forward. I would then contact a member of the FBI and forward that information to them.
Excellent, Chief. And let's do it the opposite way. So the FBI calls and they say, we need Pete to come and help us with XYZ. How
Right.
does that process work?
Then they would have to call me if they're asking for a member of the Portland Police Bureau to assist in an investigation like that. They would have to call me. I would have to be briefed on it, and I would have to make that decision.
Excellent, excellent.
And then you'd have to report that back to us at the
Yes.
end through this reporting process.
Yes.
So it would be recorded and it would be part of next year's report? Is what
Correct.
you're saying?
Yes.
Now, I had a little problem with some of the language, and when we talked in my office, I was fine with the language. We talked about reorganizing it in a way so that we were really focused on Portland. But when I saw what was submitted for city council, there's a sentence on the bottom of the front page that reads, "The city attorney's office has advised PPB CIU that they are not aware of any changes in state or federal law that would preclude them from legally working with the JTTF in any capacity." I'm hoping you will reform that language because this language is very disconcerting to me, because what it implies is that that the CIU can do whatever they want to do with the FBI, and that's just the opposite of what we have voted on as the city council. And so we don't want to create anxiety among community members where we don't need to have it. And so if you would revise that to be very clear, that we are in fact not expanding your ability to work with JTTF. In fact, we are very narrowly focused on when you would have authority, and it would only be based on the chief making a decision to work with the JTTF.
Right, we can refer that right back to the first paragraph.
Because that kind of scared me when I saw that.
Yeah, for clarity, that is, we will address that, but it is in accordance with the resolution. It is not an expansion. It is simply saying the hard document, the four corners, there's no problem there, should that be enacted. But we'll fix that.
So you may want to add, like, as per the resolution.
Got it.
Right, blah, 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 right? So just so that there's clarity, right? Because people will be upset, but at least let them be upset about the right things rather than things that we just misworded, right? Okay. And let's see. I think for me, it would be very helpful for me to know whether or not, who does the community go to when a hate crime happens? Because I hear it's the JTTF, I hear it's the FBI, I hear it's Portland Police. Can you tell me, who does the community go to when a hate crime happens?
You want to take this one? You want me to take this one?
Sure.
Okay. So primarily, if someone is a victim of any crime, we want them to call the police, whether it be 911 or non-emergency, to report that crime. That's kind of the entry point into the criminal justice system. With hate crimes, we've done, the Police Bureau, and with help of partners, has done a lot of outreach to encourage more reporting. And certainly, I think we recognize there are some people who are, there is sometimes confusion between the hate crime and a hate incident. And that's where the Portland United Against Hate, and under Commissioner Udaley's office, steps in and has done a lot of outreach there. And with changes with state law, there's going to be, at some point, a hotline, I believe, that will be at the state level for some reporting. Whatever form, we encourage people to report first and foremost and let investigators look at it. With the Police Bureau specifically, when it comes to a police report of a hate incident or hate crime or a bias crime detectives, which are not part of CIU and the Joint Terrorism Task Force, they review all those and investigate every incident. If there was an indication, for example, that that incident was connected to perhaps a known group or a larger, national or international based organization, they might come call us and say, can you help us with this, because this appears to be linked to something else. And at that point, we may funnel that to the JTTF, pending the chief's approval. The hate crimes, the other hate crimes, as I understand them, are reported to the FBI, which is a different division that does the hate crimes at the FBI level. They're separated, sort of like the Police Bureau. But, to put a fine point on it, we encourage more reporting of these incidents. And for some people who are, I think, who don't know, if they feel like they're threatened, we want that report, because that's maybe the first indicator of a problem where we may not be able to take police action through an investigation or an assessment. There's no crime. However, that person is now perhaps being looked at for future events. If their name comes up again, we can see that they were subject of a prior report or a location. There's lots of reasons for that reporting, but we want to encourage it strongly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Fritz, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the outline of the cases that were referred to PPB by the FBI. I'm wondering about the 12 cases referred to the FBI by PPB. Do we have any kind of similar data on those?
Right, and we talked about trying to expand on that in future reports. Part of the problem that we want to make sure that we're not doing is reporting inaccurate information. I could forward something to them that turns out to be something completely different, but once I forward it to them, I don't have any follow-up with it.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that I'm not reporting on something that wasn't accurate. So we'll look for ways to try and expand that. Maybe if the cases are closed, see if we can get some information on it, but I want to make sure it's accurate in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion to accept the report. I have a second from Commissioner Daly. Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Well, thank you very much for all of your hard work on this. I appreciate the report. I have read all of the community testimony that's been sent in. I do share some of the concerns that I've read. I think back to this time last year where Commissioner Hardesty was bringing the resolution to council, and then after it, to get to the resolution that passed, it was probably 6 weeks of negotiations between herself and her staff, and the mayor and his staff, and Tim Crail, my chief of staff. So this process has turned out the way I was hoping it would, and I think the information that we have received is what I was expecting, and I appreciate the transparency. Aye.
Sorry. Hardesty.
I want to thank you very much for coming to meet with me and talking about this report ahead of time. Chief, I appreciate your grace being a new kid on the block in this position. I've put a lot of heat on you, and you have handled it with grace.
Thank you.
It is my responsibility and obligation to make sure that our participation with the Joint Tourism Task Force is extremely limited. And so I appreciate the openness about kind of where we are now and how we improve this process. And I will also put on the record again, like we did last year, is that if we need to refine the resolution so that we're really more clear about how limited that participation is, then I'm very open to that idea. The fact that, Pete, that you've been very straightforward about this is kind of how the process worked, I'm very appreciative of that. But I will certainly hold you to the standard that the community has set for our involvement with the Joint Tourism Task Force. And quite frankly, I understand the fear because this is a presidential election year. And when major protests happen, it is really easy for people to get swooped up and be labeled something that they're really not a part of. And so I look forward to deepening my relationship with you, Chief, and continuing to work with the CIU to make sure that you are not stepping over the line. Thank you so much, and I vote aye.
Daly?
Well, thank you for the report. I appreciate, and I think my colleagues and the public also appreciate the level of transparency we're getting. It was somewhat of a mystery to me what the JTTF was doing prior to our withdrawal. I think it's notable that of the 12 cases referred by the FBI to PPB and the 10 referred by PPB to the FBI, that only one involved a person of color and only one involved a woman, because that more accurately reflects the true threat we face domestically, despite public perception and despite, I think, some of the focus of resources on immigrants, refugees, and communities of color. So I'm looking forward to more of these reports. I vote aye.
Wheeler?
I want to appreciate the report, and Chief, I also want to thank you for acknowledging that this is an evolving process, and with each iteration, it will get better and it will get more specific. I also want to give a shout out to our federal partners. They really could have given us the cold shoulder on some of this, and instead what they've done is they've maintained open communications on issues particularly related to hate crime and to potential acts of terrorism, and those still ring as significant threats to me, even here in this community. And I appreciate the work that you have done, and I appreciate the work our federal partners have done to keep those lines of communications open in a fairly narrow confine, and then being very transparent with the public about what we are doing and what communications are taking place. So thank you for the hard work you've put in. I vote aye. The report's accepted. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. See, it wasn't as painful as they told you it was going to be, right?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next up is item number 74. This is the second reading.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement between the Office of Management and Finance, the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and Prosper Portland to pilot the administration of the Community Opportunities and Enhancements Program.
Colleagues, this is the second reading. We've already heard a presentation and taken public testimony on this item. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz,
Thank you to the community members who testified earlier this month. You've advocated so long for this work, and you've continued to invest your time through participation in the Community Equity and Inclusion Committee. Thank you, Kimberly Brannan and your staff at Prosper Portland, Tom Reinhardt and your team at the Office of Management and Finance, and in particular, thank you to Dr. Markeisha Smith and Judith Mowry in the Office of Equity and Human Rights for your continued partnership. Thanks to Tim Crail and Claire Adamsick on my staff. And thank you to Tiffany Penson in the Office of Management and Finance, and Dante James, the former director of the Office of Equity and Human Rights, who brought this vision to Council more than 2 years ago. When my colleagues and I on the Council committed to this concept in November of 2017, we made a commitment to the community, to small construction business owners of color who had been historically left out of large-scale city contracting opportunities. I am deeply concerned about the time it has taken to get to this point and the various changes in direction, and I believe we continue to place community trust in city commitments on thin ice. That said, as I said last week in response to community testimony, I am humbled by affected parties' willingness to give us yet another chance. In response to that testimony, I vote aye.
Hardesty,
Thank you. I will say that I agree with the statement just made by Commissioner Fritz. It's been a long, long, long haul getting these dollars out the door to support minority and women and emerging small business enterprise. I am still not convinced that what the process that we have will lead to stronger minority and women-owned businesses, but I will make a commitment to continue to work with Prosper Portland to hold them accountable to what our vision is about how these dollars are spent. It is shameful that it's been 18 months trying to get these dollars out the door, but it's really important to not only get them out the door, but make sure that we are strengthening these small businesses so that they can thrive in our community. I vote aye.
Udaley,
Well, I'm pleased that this pilot is supported by the community and builds on the good work that the city has already done, partnering with community to ensure that public dollars spent lead to diverse participation in contracting. I want to thank the Office of Management and Finance, the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and Prosper Portland, as well as our many community partners, and I look forward to continuing to engage through PBOT on how this program will be administered and implemented. I vote aye.
Wheeler,
Colleagues, we all agree that the city has a responsibility to ensure public dollars spent benefit the community by optimizing diverse participation in contracting and acknowledge that historical disparities exist in the construction industry, specifically for women and people of color. And those disparities then filter down to the projects that we invest in across all of our bureaus. As we heard in the testimony 2 weeks ago, this funding is needed to increase the diversity of the construction workforce, assist apprentices as they move towards journey status, and provide support to the many small firms that would like to undertake larger public contracts. Why, some people may ask, are we focusing dollars towards women and minority contractors rather than just focusing on the bottom line? And the answer is because these are broad resources that come from the public, and therefore all entities who provide these types of service should be entitled to equal access to the kinds of investments that we are making. I want to acknowledge again that we've kept the construction community and our business and our workforce development partners waiting too long to see these funds. However, we did so to ensure that we were setting up a program that would maximize our ability to get the funding into the community and achieve the outcomes of the program. This intergovernmental agreement enables us to do that by leveraging existing partnerships and programs like Prosper Portland's Inclusive Business Resource Network, and by drawing on the collective expertise of city bureaus, including Prosper Portland, the Office of Management and Finance, and the Office of Equity and Human Rights to develop an effective program with a robust system of accountability. At the first reading, we also heard from testimony and from my colleagues the importance of making sure that we're measuring and tracking outcomes to be accountable to the program goals, and I agree that this is essential. I'm glad that with this vote, we're now moving forward to start the disbursement of the funds into the community. I want to thank Tom Reinhardt and the OMF team, including Tiffany Penson, Kimberly Branham, and all the crew over at Prosper Portland, Dr. Markeisha Smith and Judith Mallory at the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and of course, my tireless team. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 75, also a second reading.
Authorize the Office of Management and Finance to utilize funds from the Water Bureau Washington Park Reservoirs Improvements Project in the amount of $1,120,000 to support the Community Opportunities and Enhancements Program.
This is also a second reading. Please call the roll.
Fritz?
The Washington Park Reservoirs Improvements Project is a ratepayer-funded multi-year city construction project that is of such broad scope as to enable and in fact require the city to create economic opportunities and benefits for disadvantaged firms. The Water Bureau included a community benefits plan as part of the project, led by Commissioner Fish, and this was the precursor to the Community Benefits Agreement and Community Equity and Inclusion Plan. The Portland City Charter requires that expenditure of ratepayer funds must be reasonably related to the provision of water and sewer services pursuant to a ruling of the Multnomah County Circuit Court. The use of the remaining funds from the project's community benefits plan to support technical assistance for disadvantaged firms and workforce development for construction trades served by this project will be consistent with the project's goals, as I just referenced, if expended on matters reasonably related to the provision of water services, which is the intent. I'm happy to vote aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 76.
Declare surplus real property at 6 Water Bureau locations and request authorization to dispose of these properties.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. The ordinance before us authorizes the Water Bureau to dispose of 6 properties listed in the ordinance documentation. The Bureau has followed the city ordinances and the relevant policies, including polling the other bureau or asking the other bureaus to see if the property fits any of their needs, and none were interested. And I need to credit again Commissioner Fish for his leadership in making sure that the surplus property disposition process is clear, accountable, inclusive, and provides lots and lots of public notice. And all of that public notice was provided. The properties in question are surplus to Water Bureau and city needs. The public interest is best served by selling the properties at fair market value, returning the land to other uses, and the money will go into the water fund as required. Here to present is Portland Water Bureau Director Michael Sturr.
Is it afternoon or morning?
Afternoon.
Good morning. It's still morning. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners.
We need to get this guy a new watch. It's 12:30, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
12:30.
Is it? Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. It all blends. It's all gray outside. So expanding a little bit, my name is Mike Stewart, by the way. I'm Director of the Water Bureau. I'll expand a little bit on what Commissioner Fritz said. We are bringing 6 properties here to get your authorization, permission to dispose of them. We have indeed followed the city's process. That process, a couple things are worth mentioning. We coordinate with all the bureaus, including the Housing Bureau. We also coordinate with a bunch of other people, and I'll list them: PDC, Metro, TriMet, the Port of Portland, the county, the state, and the Joint Office of Homelessness. I've provided maps for the property, and what I would suggest to you is that we floated these properties kind of in a group because all 6 of these properties are challenged in one way or another. 2 of the properties have ground tanks on them. They're pretty easy to deal with for a developer. It takes a bulldozer, an excavator with a pavement breaker, and a dump truck. One of the properties has an elevated tank on it. In this piece of property, we're kind of testing the market, and we will see what that looks like. And then 2 remaining pieces of property are access challenged in one way or another. And the only way to find out whether there is a market for these properties is to sort of test the market, and that's what we're doing. If we don't get a satisfactory agreement in any of these, we'll have to back up and dream up another scheme. For example, one that might be a challenge is the elevated tank. There may be no takers. And something I would do in that regard is perhaps we would take the tank down, and we would have to balance the expense of that against other properties we might sell. So that's basically the basics of it. We hope that in the second reading you'll approve the ordinance. Questions?
Commissioner Hardesty has a question.
Yeah, I'm not Fritz. I know you. You were going to call me Fritz, weren't you?
No, I was not. I deny any allegations of wrongdoing.
It's been a long day.
and I
It's
cannot
afternoon
recall.
already.
I cannot recall.
Take the fifth. So I apologize for just popping this question on you. I had asked my office to talk to Commissioner Fritz's office about whether any of these properties are suitable for temporary camping. That would be, of course, self-managed. If we own these properties and there's really no rush in actually acquiring the money that the sale would have, you said you talked to the Joint Office of Houseless Services, and they didn't see any opportunity to utilize these 5 pieces of land for folks who are suffering on our street?
I have to trust the judgment of the Housing Bureau and the Joint Office of Homelessness. As I said, these properties are kind of awkward, and there are
Awkward's
facilities.
not bad if you need a place, right?
All I can say is that they are awkward and access challenged, and I think it's in our best interest to sell them. They're none of them very big.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your answer to the question. Even if it wasn't as satisfactory if I would have liked it to have been. Mayor, maybe we will have some opportunity between now and when we have our second reading to do some due diligence, because what we know.
Excuse me, may I say something, please?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner, please.
I'd like to further respond to your question. The challenge is that we are required to use Water Bureau property for things reasonably related to the provision of water services. So even if these properties were suitable for tiny housing, they would need to be, the rent would need to be paid by the joint office. And I would assume that given the expense of setting up the small villages, they are looking at places that have better access and more amenities.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate you weighing in on this. And again, I'm just asking a question and would like to make sure that we're not giving away property that we could temporarily use to house houseless folks. So thank you.
Could I ask a follow-up on this question,
Sure.
Mike, or maybe Commissioner Fritz has a thought on this? My assumption is that this is tied into all of the discussions that we have had here and some of the legal proceedings around Water Bureau assets being used for the delivery of water. But in theory, we could buy these properties at assessed value or market value, could we not? And then use them for other purposes if we so desired?
Yes, and in fact, we've done that. We've sold one big piece of property to the Housing Bureau up in Northeast Portland because it was suitable for them to pick it up and develop it. from my point of view, somebody who owns lots of pieces of property that we have inherited over the years as we have taken over these small water systems, I bear a huge liability for vacant property that's not used. And often we don't think about that, but to imagine a kind of a really bad outcome if there was a violent crime committed, someone could take us to civil court and sue us because we weren't appropriately managing the property. So from the Bureau's point of view, we have huge liability for real estate that we actually don't really have a use for. The second thing I would say is one of Portland's challenges in dealing with low-income housing and so on is we have a supply problem with bare land, and returning property that we don't need to the general supply of land in the city is actually, I think, quite a benefit. These particular 6 properties are challenged in one way or another, and I'm not sure that I'll actually be able to sell all of them as they are. I'm kind of thinking in my own mind it'll be pretty easy to sell the Roan property. It's tucked behind where we have Home Forward, used to be the old Powell Valley Road Water District, and the 2 pieces of property that have ground tanks on them is pretty easy to deal with. The others may have no interest, and I'm not sure what we'll do about that, but we need to find out.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you. I appreciate your concerns about liability, but somebody would fall on the sidewalk outside City Hall and sue us, so we can't prevent people from suing us. But when we declare an emergency, I suspect that means that we operate differently than we would if we were in a non-emergency situation. So I get really frustrated when I get told from this podium that this is the way we've always done stuff. If the state declares a housing emergency, I expect that, again, would give us more flexibility to do things differently than we've done them in the past. And so I would be appreciative of Bureau directors who are open to new possibilities because of the emergencies that we're in, rather than informing me of how things have been done all along the way. Thank you.
Actually, this is not how it's been done all along. As you may remember, under Commissioner Leonard, there was significant amounts of use of Water Bureau property and funds for things other than the provision of water services. And so since we got sued on that, and as I mentioned in the last item, we lost, we have had to be extremely careful. And but in any case, we have already asked and asked again to the Housing Bureau and the Joint Office if they are interested in these properties, and the answer was no.
Thank you very much. But again, this is not a Randy Leonard toilet project. And we were not in a housing emergency when Randy Leonard decided to do the fancy toilet. So I think we're mixing apples and oranges, but it does sound like Commissioner Fritz and I need an eyeball-to-eyeball conversation before this comes back on the agenda. So thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Commissioner Daly has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. I appreciate this conversation, this issue of whether or not the city owns property that could be used for alternative shelter sites has been going on, since before we came here. It has been frustrating because it doesn't seem like we're getting straight answers all of the time. While I understand the restriction on the Water Bureau in particular because of the ratepayer issue, I do think it's reasonable for us to ask if the sites have been evaluated and would they be appropriate for use for these kinds of sites. We're doing that through PBOT. And there are a number of criteria that we need for a site to really be useful for that purpose. And there, of course, are often conflicting interests adjacent to those sites. So it's a really touchy conversation. But yeah, I guess I'd just like to say, the ratepayer issue aside, any city property that we're thinking about, what are we calling it?
Selling.
Surplus, discarding
Surplus,
or disposing
yeah.
of.
Surplus.
Yeah, was I think the language. That we get an actual evaluation of what it could or couldn't be used for. Does that seem reasonable?
That seems very logical, and I'm still not convinced that if we're not selling the water property and we're not doing anything on the property except letting people sleep and camp, I'm still not convinced that we're not violating any water policy because we're not actually doing anything except giving people a safe place to lay their head.
In the
So,
event that it can't be sold,
if-
is what you're
well,
saying?
even if it could be sold,
Oh.
is it in our best interest, in the community's best interest to sell it now or to create small, safe, self-managed camps that people can take control of their life? That's all I'm saying. So thank you very much. It is a longer conversation, and
I think there's a really good conversation to be had here, and you may be several steps ahead of me. Is there currently any centralized disposition process that would include the Housing Bureau or the Joint
So,
Office of Homeless Services? Is there some
The
sharing of
process that
information?
we went through, this all began 15 years ago when we were trying to sell a piece of property and it turned into a huge kerfuffle. And during that time, I think it was either Commissioner Fish and/or Commissioner Leonard, I don't remember who started it, but we worked this process out. And what I've done here is follow the city's ordinance and policy for the disposal of property. And the process is, basically, we go to each bureau and we ask, do you have a need for this property? And in my case, I would sell it to them or rent it or something because we're the water fund and I can't help that.
So that there is already
So there is a
protocol in place.
process, and I tried to be careful and mention for both Commissioner Fritz's benefit and Commissioner Hardesty's benefit that it includes talking to the Housing Bureau and to the Joint Office of Homelessness, and I can only trust that they know what they need and where they need it. And because you had asked Commissioner Fritz's office, and they told me, check this out last night, I called Shannon in the middle of the night, well, not exactly the middle of the night, and said, can you check this again? And make sure that I'm not doing something that could be done differently.
And I appreciate that, and I
So,
respect
so
that.
there is a
Thank you
pretty
for doing that.
detailed process, and if you wanted more of an evaluation, I think you could slide that into this process and people would make it.
Okay, great, thank you. I appreciate that.
this has been a really good conversation, Mayor. And I think for me, I need to know what an emergency means, right? Because if the state of Oregon is going to declare a housing emergency, what does that mean as far as how we can remove barriers to making sure that we can get more people in housing? I get really frustrated when everything is so, well, no, we got to do this, we got to do that, right? What does the emergency mean if it doesn't mean we can act differently? What does it mean? And how will the state emergency help us do things differently? Do you have any idea about that? Is that a?
Well, I actually do. The
How's
city
that?
declared a housing state of emergency, and what that did was it removed some of the impediments to locating both shelter and affordable housing in the city of Portland. So actually, as the state takes up their question of the housing emergency, they're actually looking at the code that we adopted several years ago.
I mean, and I wish we could apply the same rules to federal, metro, and county-owned property as well, instead of returning property to the private market. Just
Why can't we?
Evaluating, let's talk, evaluating every property for, its suitability for development.
Okay, good conversation. I'm going to move us along, but there's a lot of food for thought here. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes,
Mike?
sir, it does.
It was very good.
It was an
I-
interesting
thank you.
conversation.
It was great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we have people signed up to testify on this ordinance, Carla?
Yes, we have about 5 people.
Very good.
The first 3, please come on up, are Lightning Super Karma, Maggie, and Charles Bridge Crane Johnson.
Greetings, welcome.
Mayor, could I just ask a time question? I'm going to try to get in for 2 o'clock, but I don't know if I'm going to have much leeway on that, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I know we've got 2 items that were pulled off the consent agenda as well.
Yeah, so could I do, given that we have Commissioner Fritz only for a short while, could I please limit testimony to 2 minutes? Do you want to start, Maggie?
Okay.
Thank you.
So a while back, I put $1 on those Water Bureau properties. So if they sold them without contacting me, hey, you know what? I could sue you guys. So I would like to say that I am the perfect person to put on these Water Bureau properties. I don't smoke. I don't like candles. When I used to go hiking when I was young, I didn't light fires because I thought that was an imposition to all the wild animals. So if you're looking for someone who's going to take care of the property and reduce liability, just do some background checks and say, look, we need people who are low risk, who are not going to be lighting fires. And, you know, if you guys can have solar panels on your little tiny homes rather than propane, right? So, you know, there's no risk of, you know, propane exploding. So really, there is a way to do it. I mean, I could get enough money and put a little 20-foot thing on there right now if you guys would let me, and then, you know, Cascadia wouldn't have to be paying $40 for me to go through and screen on every, you know, place that isn't available because they're very mysterious about whether they have an apartment available or not. So, there are low-risk homeless people that you could put on these properties.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Karma, land banking, largest landowner of the city. There you are, the city of Portland. As the gentleman stated, you've been holding these properties so long, let them out to the private sector. Here's my big problem about this. We need to have real estate brokers involved in any deal. I am sick and tired of the city doing backroom deals between developers and certain people that get their campaigns funded. I am demanding that we have real estate brokers brought in to do fair market assessments on what is out there, what has been sold, the professionals, and when they make a mistake, they have E&O insurance, and guess what? If they make a big mistake and undervalue a property and sell it, I will pull your real estate license. Those are the professionals we want in place. Now, as far as these properties being utilized for other purposes, great point. We need a good due diligence on this to review this. And again, the liability issue obviously is a big concern, and it has to be addressed. My biggest problem on these surplus properties, if you transfer them or try to sell them to another bureau, in my opinion, the public just paid twice for a property. I'm sick and tired of the public being taken advantage of, paying double for a property, and I want that to end immediately. If you go from one bureau to the other, it transfers at zero value, and quit double dipping the public. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Charles Bridge Crane Johnson, and of course, this situation is exacerbated by Mr. Di Lorenzo's lawsuit. But the point is if we've heard I think the gentleman from the Water Bureau has done all he can. One of the problems is that the extent of his procedure that he's been instructed in is to go to Home Forward and go to the Joint Office of Homeless Services. In a different context, the Joint Office of Homeless Services is administered by an addict. Mark Jolin is addicted to taking money and dumping it on transition projects after skimming off a little bit to staff the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Right to Dream and Hazelnut Grove were not envisioned or assisted in their birth by the Joint Office of Homeless Services. So we need to do better with our process and find out what nonprofit, what groups are there. Now, when we look at this list, unfortunately, I don't have access to Appendix B. You know, some of these properties, they're on the extreme ends of streets in as close as 22nd or 58th. And, but most particular is Going Street. So just 18 blocks west of Vancouver and Williams is a Going Street property. I don't know which one has the elevated tank because Appendix B wasn't available on the electronic documents, but the idea that these properties might be difficult to sell is all the more reason to consider that even if it's a short-term camp that doesn't have the duration of Hazelnut Grove, or, you know, Right to Dream was able to move, It seems like 1800 Going Street is not very far from Hazelnut Grove, which we're trying to send out to St. John's, where some people are saying, oh my gosh, homeless people might live next to the library that they spend their whole day in anyway. So I think there is room to dig into this a little deeper and talk to people who've done on the ground work. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Next, please.
The last two who signed up are Edith Gillis and Diana Gutman.
Edith, why don't you start, please? Somebody go.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor, President, Council, and Council. This is a heavy conversation, and so overall, I'm in support of this because this has been extended far too long. Action needs to be taken. However, I do have questions for the two properties that have ground tanks on them. I understand that it's going to take a bulldozer to remove to fix that property. And so my question is, how is this going to affect the land that is going to be bulldozed? What is going to be the pollution overflow? If that hasn't been thought about, that's something that needs to be on everyone's radar right now, because we're in a climate crisis as well. And so for all these other crises, the homeless crisis, that is a real crisis. The climate crisis, that is a real crisis. The two crises that I'm even speaking about affect our community and affects how the city of Portland is going to even operate and whether or not we're going to be able to sustain for years to come. So I think it's very important that we start thinking about the pollution overflow for these 6 properties and start thinking green, finding renewable materials that we can utilize in order to bring these properties to be something so much more than what they currently are. I think that it would be really beneficial to do a land recon on all 6 properties with PBOT and community partners. And when I say community partners, I'm talking about community partners that will help with the homeless crisis, community partners that will also help with our environmental crisis that we're currently in, and also have people that would be able to give bids on estimates on what materials are going to need to bring these lands up to code. I think that has to happen before the next report. And I'm out of time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Edith Gillis. I would like you to have posted online and then have, with continuous loop, video in multiple languages in different community centers, descriptions of the locations, and asking them within a grid criteria of climate emergency, housing emergency, public health with biodiversity, and emergency preparedness and disaster resilience. So they're looking at how can this property build community and be a community gathering place, supporting art and our indigenous and our different multicultural values. How can this help us get to know each other, care about each other, and be prepared when the disasters happen? How will this provide a place for us to have our internal refugee camps when the buildings fall down and the gas lines blow up? We can't, and the rail lines, blow up. How will we be able to increase our pollinator paths, our permaculture food forests, and provide an ongoing democratic process and local ownership and getting more connected to the land. I'm thinking that it's very possible in these places, just as we had in Park Rose, a water tower once a year that a local dentist painted a new rose for that year until he was told he had to go. It was a great source of pride, and you saw there was less vandalism, et cetera, in the area until he was required to go, and he painted his little paint drop as he was leaving. I'm thinking that in these areas, we can have locally community governed housing that have permaculture, food, forest, fencing for beauty, and we can have local folks learning how to develop community gathering places as we have on Burnside near Park.
Very good. Thank you both. Does that complete public testimony on this item?
That's all who signed up.
This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Could we please briefly go to the consent agenda, because there are items on the consent agenda that have been pulled, one of which we need to get to right now because it is an emergency ordinance. That's 72. Please read 72.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for right-of-way services for Northeast Halsey Street Bike Ped Transit Improvements Project.
Is there public testimony on this item?
Terry Parker pulled this one. I don't know if he's
Come
still
on up.
here. Oh, there he is.
Two minutes, please.
Yes, sir. I didn't have anything written for this. Again, my name's Terry Parker. I live in Northeast Portland. I live right off of Halsey Street. And when I first read this, I was concerned about the fact that the lines of communication to the neighborhoods have not been held up. There's some issues with the projects, the Growing Transit Communities projects that have not been settled. I'm not sure where these right-of-way acquisitions are going to occur. My first thought was the overpasses over 205 and 82nd and I-84, because the state was involved. I don't know if that's it or not, but I really have some concerns because there's like 4 or 5 different neighborhoods involved in this Halsey thing, and at least my neighborhood is in the middle. So whatever happens to Halsey, it's our access and in and out of at least my portion of the neighborhood. So I'm concerned about as to what is taking place here, particularly in that it was an emergency ordinance, because from 42nd to about 62nd, I understand that project is pretty well underway, probably 60% designed, and I don't know that there's any right-of-way acquisitions in that. The same with the 60th Avenue sidewalks. I don't think there's any acquisitions in that. So I'm very concerned when I read this, and it's hard to read. I just saw it for the first time today, that the lines of communication to the neighborhoods so that we can comment on it, particularly when it's an emergency ordinance, are not being maintained. And, you know, are we going to get streets that are too narrow, like in Gateway, where a bus can't even stay between the lines? I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Aye.
Hardesty?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Read 69 and 70 together, please.
69, amend contract with Analytical Services, Inc. for a no-cost extension to provide backup cryptosporidium laboratory testing in support of Portland Water Bureau's bilateral compliance agreement with Oregon Health Authority, and 70, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with the Board of Governors of the Colorado State University System for laboratory services for cryptosporidium wildlife scat analysis in an amount not to exceed $400,000.
Public testimony?
D. White requested this be pulled.
Come on up.
My name is Dee White. I'm against, do I only have 2 minutes?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
On both
Yeah.
of these?
Yeah, because unfortunately, we're down one person. if
Yeah,
we
well,
lose the quorum.
okay. I'm just going to cut to the chase then. I would like to talk about both, but I'm only going to talk about the first one. The lab, it was given, ASI was given this contract in 2015. They go way back. They had contracts from 2005 when it was called Clancy Environmental. Now they're up for renewal of this contract. In 2015. In 2016, the state of Pennsylvania pulled their certification and banned them from conducting water quality tests, including tests for cryptosporidium. because they were suspended immediately for failing to ensure the accuracy of the data and for failing to meet the test method requirements. They do not tolerate any of those violations, especially when it comes to safeguarding public health. So they were banned from testing in Pennsylvania, and several other states looked at doing it as well. I think New Hampshire did. But nevertheless, the contract with them stood with us, no questions asked. So the first testing that came in, I've got the chain of custody forms, and the chain of custody forms not only lack the ones where they found crypto. The chain of custody forms are completely incomplete. There's no date received by on it. There is no date on the date of the analysis that was made, and so you don't know what the holding times were, which is very critical in any sort of test. The holding times are not apparent. The validity of the data is now questionable, and the Portland Water Bureau lab can't say firmly that crypto was found, because there's no dates on these chain of custody forms. And nobody signed on them. Nobody even signed having received them at this ASI lab. And their certification has been pulled by another state. And yet we get... Well, so and yet we allow these chain of custody forms through. Nobody looked at them. Nobody said, hey, you know, these chain of custody forms are wrong. They're incomplete. How can we trust that the data that's being reported here, meaning they found some crypto, they found one little ooh cyst, and then they found 2 more later, and then they found 3 more just in January. Then
I just wanted you to complete the sentence.
so I'm just saying that.
Your time is up, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do you have some data you want to leave with?
I'm going. That's what I want to say. I have all this data, and I'm going to leave it at each one of y'all's desk.
Yeah, good, because this is just a first, since it's been pulled, it's now a first reading, so we'll have time to look at that.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Charles Bridge Crane Johnson, and you know, I'm old, not maybe quite a boomer, so I grew up on Boogeyman. Now in Portland, we've got cryptosporidium. $1 billion worth of cryptosporidium. Wow. When we talk about water and the quality of life here in Oregon, we have to also say how unfortunate that between Oregon Health Sciences University, Oregon State University, and the University of Oregon, they're not competent, or at least not lowest bidder, to receive $400,000 to talk about things in the water in our own state. Instead, we have to go to Colorado State to get that and worry about sketchy documentation, paying out, you know, hopefully Colorado State is going to do better than this organization that Ms. White has talked about. But it's painful for average income people to hear about out-of-state contractors being able to do shoddy work and get fully paid. So I hope that the gentleman who talked with us about, you know, from the Water Bureau that talked about the difficulty of getting with these properties will also bear in mind the advantages of when you're in a situation where you're going to say, hey, Portland, EPA is going to spank us if we don't spend 8 times as much as Seattle spent to get cryptosporidium out of our water. You really need to have your crap tight for us to feel good about your plan for the water bills to double over the next 10 years. Please either get the data at the quality of what you're paying for, or maybe back away from a bad idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there further public testimony on this item?
So if I might just provide some information.
Yeah. Sure, Commissioner
As of
Fritz.
July of 2017, the Water Bureau's Water Quality Laboratory is accredited for cryptosporidium testing, and the majority of the samples are analyzed in-house. The use of a contract laboratory has been intermittently necessary as a backup during normal analyst outages or when monitoring exceeds in-house capacity, which happens maybe 2 to 4 weeks out of the year. Retaining a backup lab is essential in the case of unforeseen emergencies or a loss of accreditation. The not-to-exceed value with the existing Analytical Services Inc. contract has sufficient funds for the next 5 years.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Item number 69 is the first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Item 70 is the first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It also moves to second reading. And that completes the consent agenda. We'll go back to item number 77, please.
Amend sidewalk repair program to update the appeals and hearing process.
Commissioner Daly.
I don't have an intro for this. It's just a second.
Oh, I'm
reading.
sorry. I
Yeah.
apologize. I did not see that. This is a second reading, so we've already heard testimony on this item and a presentation. Any further discussion on item 77? Seeing none, we will call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Yes, 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 aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Last but not least, item 78, also a second reading.
You only have 72. I only have 72 listed. We had 69 and 70 pulled. Sorry about that. 78, authorize a contract for $4 million with Conduit State and Local Solutions, Inc. to provide ongoing photographic traffic enforcement services for the city's current photographic enforcement system.
Any further discussion?
Oh,
Commissioner Daly?
oh, yeah, no, go ahead.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Udaly.
I want to thank my colleagues for their questions on this item and ultimately for their support and trust that we will be working to expedite the new RFP. I understand that the contract is paid for with the fees assessed on the tickets, but I have ongoing concerns about the cost. I'm hopeful that we will find a more competitive bid through the RFP process. I am interested in expanding the use of radar traffic cameras as the most safe and equitable tool for traffic enforcement that we currently have available. And I look forward to continuing this discussion with our team, with the community, and my colleagues. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I want to thank Commissioner Udaly. I want to thank the PBOT team. I want to thank the Portland Police Bureau and Sergeant Lorenko and everybody who worked hard on this. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted, and we are adjourned.